everyone. Welcome to the July 20th, 2023 Baltimore City Planning Commission meeting. My name is Sean Davis, Chair of the Commission. And before we begin our regular stuff, I wanted to point out we have two new commissioners with us who are starting. This is their first commission hearing. First, I'd like to introduce Claudia. First, before I forget, make sure that your microphone is turned on.
You'll hear us yell at you frequently, sorry.
So you can hear Ivor in the back clapping, which is great. And for those of you on that side, if you are turning to ask the speaker a question, bring your mic with you or bring a mic with you so that it can be recorded.
I can't hear you otherwise.
All right, now with that, I would like to introduce Claudia Jolin. Claudia is with the Downtown Partnership. If you just give us a little bit of background on yourself, that'd be helpful.
Sure, great. Thanks, Chairman. Claudia Jolin, Vice President of Economic Development at Downtown Partnership. I've been there for almost 7 years as a trained economist. Before then, I worked at City Hall as well in economic development. And before that, at Baltimore Development Corporation in economic development. So I've been doing that for about 10 years in the city. Before that, I was doing federal policy, international federal policy at the State Department, and spent 6 years as active duty Navy doing data analytics as well. So bringing all that experience from around the world, hopefully trying to make Baltimore a little bit better, and going through this planning process with Chris and the director here, seeing how I can give my perspective for the city and continue to work here and have a good time. Thank you.
Welcome. It's great to have you. We also have Doug McCoach. Doug is a architect. I'll let Doug give an opportunity to introduce himself.
Mike?
Mike.
Mike. Ivor. So I was born here in Baltimore in 1960 at Union Memorial Hospital, and have been really fortunate to live here for the last 60 or so years. I attended Syracuse University. I have a bachelor's degree in architecture, and I was employed by a firm called RTKL and Arcadis from 84 to 2018 for 35 years. I was vice president there for 18 years and ran planning studios in Washington, D.C. and New York City. I was planning commissioner here in one of these seats for about 6 years, from 2001, 2007. And then I led the department here for 20 months during the Dixon administration. And that experience changed my life profoundly. And then in addition, I had the opportunity to work for Sean for almost 2 years and have since been an independent practitioner since 2020. Over the course of that career, I've been focused on design at very, very large scale and very, very tiny scales from a variety of perspectives. From a community perspective, I've been involved with and still are involved with Waverly Main Street for the past 6 years, authoring design standards, providing community design review. I was on the board of Downtown Partnership for 6 years, and now I've been on the Live Baltimore board for a couple of years. And I've been a part of the Homeland Community Architecture Review Committee for 25 years. From a development perspective, I worked across the region, as well as internationally on development master plans. In places like Jubail, Saudi Arabia, Jakarta, Indonesia, Shanghai, China, Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I've worked with communities on waterfront brownfield redevelopment in Beacon, New York, East Providence, Rhode Island, and Cleveland, Ohio. From an architect's perspective, I've been the lead designer on significant local projects, like the Micah Gateway project and the T. Rowe Price Owings Mills campus. And I've had a residential practice for over 30 years with scores of executed projects throughout Baltimore neighborhoods in the region. So all these perspectives have taught me a few simple lessons that I would apply to this role. Now, the first is the value of process. And I learned that hard when I was here in the department and acting as a planning commissioner, because process sheds extreme perspectives, and it also drives towards best outcomes. And I think that's what this organization is all about. I learned the value of listening, synthesizing multiple perspectives, which I think is essential to arriving at equitable outcomes. And I can't tell you how many times I've looked across the table and sort of forced myself to understand another perspective, and at the end of the day, that perspective is really valuable in the solution. And then I've learned the value of design. It's a problem-solving mechanism, and I think it also is a vehicle to achieve reconciliation. And so these are the things that I would want to bring to the commission over the next period. That's me.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Sure.
So I'd also like to turn it over to Chris. We have a couple of new planning team members.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce two new community planners. Nicholas Chupin, I may be butchering that name, is the inner southwest area planner, and Tariq Bolden is our new Western District planner, both taking on areas with a lot of activity. I also wanted to announce, you may remember on June 15th, the governor announced the reboot of the red line planning process. And next week, there are 5 different community engagement meetings, including one on, I think it's Thursday, the 27th, at the War Memorial, and on the 29th at the Biopark. There's also one in West Baltimore and one in Southeast Baltimore and one in the county. So I would encourage you to attend one of those. Thank you. Oh, and no, one other item. Planning Department alumni, it's a big, strong, proud group. We have people that have been as much as the number 2 person in the EPA under the Obama administration. A lot of people have worked here that have gone on to bigger and better things, but still recall their employment here very, very fondly. This week, we lost one of those. Joyce Leviton was head of community planning during the Schmoke and O'Malley administrations, and she passed away a couple days ago. Our former assistant director was her primary caregiver, I think, at the end, so that's how we know about that. There are no services like dates identified until the fall.
Okay, with that, I would like to turn it over to the Secretary of the Commission, also Chris Ryer, Planning Director and Secretary of the Commission, for a roll call.
Robin Allen. Justin Williams.
Here.
Doug McCoach.
Here.
Marcia Collins.
Here.
The Honorable Eric Costello is not here. Talib Horn.
Present.
Claudia Jolin.
Here.
Eric Stevenson.
Here.
And Sean Davis.
Here. We have before us our meeting minutes from April 29th. Are there any questions or comments regarding those minutes? If not, do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? I think Doug and Claudia, you should abstain, obviously. All right, next we move on to our consent agenda. We have CIP transfers from July 12th. There were 3 items on that Board of Estimates meeting. Are there any questions or comments regarding those? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Eric Tissot, we had on our Wix page the July 19th meeting, but there was no backup for that. I'm sorry.
Right, so that was a last-minute add during the briefing session, so if you close your browser and then reopen it, it hopefully will display the correct document. Sorry about that. Kristen Ahern sent me that from vacation late last night, and I did not upload it correctly, so that's my fault, not hers.
All right. Do you have that up? Because I just actually probably crashed this iPad.
It should link correctly for the July 19th
Can you touch
date.
yours? Which
If you
one?
click on it.
Just CIP. And then the 19th one. And that is still showing the 12th.
Okay,
We'll come back to that.
yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to come back to that,
All
apologies.
right, so make sure before we adjourn for today that we can take a look at that and approve that so we don't hold up any necessary capital, especially like from the people for Rec and Parks. All right, moving on, next an item under the consent agenda is revised final plans approval, Marketplace at Fells Point, Plan Unit Development PUD number 137, the Outdoor Plaza. This is in the First District. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding that? Not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn, second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Finally, on the consent agenda, we have minor subdivision final plans for 900 South Kenwood Avenue in the First District. Any questions or comments regarding this? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn, second.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving into our regular agenda, I will turn it
Mr.
over
Chair.
to, yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was trying to forward that. I didn't catch the motion on item 4.
Item 4 was moved by Commissioner Horn, seconded by Commissioner Collins.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our regular agenda item, our regular agenda. Item number 6, I turn it over to,
Item number 6 is the Druid Lake Vision Plan. It's a presentation only, there's no vote. Adam Borman from Department of Recreation and Parks will present.
Mr. Borman, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I want to thank the commission for having us here today. My name is Adam Borman. I'm the Chief of Capital Development for Rec and Parks. From my team, I'm joined by the project manager, Larissa Torres, and Kayla Goldstein, both LAs on my team. We've been working on this project for a few years now with support of the Planning Commission and the CIP to hire a consultant and lead a vision plan. We've since progressed to 15% and ultimately and now into 30% design. We've started making rounds, putting this out and getting people excited. Through that process, we've gotten Senator Hayes and folks at the state level excited to the amount that they've put $17 million towards this project. So that is nowhere near enough to get the whole thing done, but it's a good start. So we see this as a really transformative opportunity for the Baltimore region. It's taking really an inconvenient and messy project that is the Druid DPW reservoir project. It's been going on for some time. It's really displaced a lot of our park users. But at the end of the day, we as a department see this as a great opportunity to take this, sterile drinking reservoir that was inaccessible and unusable for the most part and create something of biodiversity and life and access. So I will leave it at that. I want to take this opportunity to introduce our design consultants. I don't think you've had the chance to hear from them yet, but they're relatively new to town and they are making waves. So with that, Unknown Studio.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. We have a slide hopefully being pulled up here.
Yeah, we're trying to get to the extended, there.
Fabulous, thank you. My name is Claire Augrey. I'm a partner at Unknown Studio.
I'm Nick Lace, a partner at Unknown Studio.
And we're gonna try to breeze through where we are about 15 minutes flat. Do I have a clicker here?
Right there, yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. We have to share it for the people that are not
Okay,
in the room with us.
fabulous. Let's see if this works.
And then if the clicker does not work, which sometimes gives me a hard time, I'm happy to just,
If you have a USB on this side, okay.
Does that work?
the hybrid world is still
Yeah.
new to us.
Virtual's okay, in-person's easy, and hybrid's really hard. It's okay, we'll just say next slide, no problem. Well, it's truly a pleasure to be here. Working on big public parks is why we became landscape architects, and to do it in our hometown is just very humbling. So we're really excited to bring you up to speed. I think you've probably seen a little bit of the vision plan. We'll race through that and then talk a little bit more detail about what we've been up to on the technical side over the last about 8 months as we've started into real design documentation. So go ahead, next slide. I'm going to go pretty fast here. So we,
Keep your hand on the
yeah,
trigger.
keep your trigger finger ready. So we're going to recap the vision process to date. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing in the technical phase, starting in schematic. And we're going to provide the context for everything that's going on all around Druid Lake. There's a lot of stakeholders and a lot of simultaneous capital projects happening. And we welcome your feedback on all of these agenda items. Next slide. So this is a slide that we often start with. For those students of landscape architecture and American history, you know already Druid is the third oldest major public park in the country. It is at the same stature as Central Park, Prospect Park, Fairmount Park. It's a really, really special and important place in the history of the world and of our country and, of course, our city. So we want to really deliver at that kind of level and make sure we're holding ourselves accountable to that level of design and legacy. Next slide. There's also a huge restorative justice aspect to this park and this part of the park in particular, environmental justice in terms of making sure we're considering the name, the nomenclature of the park is for the trees and to create a beautiful environment. It's also hugely about access, which Adam already mentioned. Access for all park users, access across a very, very difficult transportation system encircling the park today, and making sure that we're creating a place which is not just build it and they will come, but which is proactively welcoming families and folks into the park. Next slide. So this is our study area. We're in the southeast corner of the park along Druid Park Lake Drive. Here you see, just for context, what the lake would look like after the tanks project comes online. We looked at this entire area in the vision plan. Next slide. And there's simultaneously other projects happening, the Big Jump, the DOT-led project for Druid Park Lake Drive, the tanks, of course, and then many, many different projects in the Reservoir Hill area that you all are well aware of, and many trails projects. So we've had many conversations with all of these, and we've tried to be very open and engage with all of these simultaneous projects and do our best to be open and also inform and kind of lift all boats as we've been going forward. Next slide. So the tanks plan, when Adam first approached us when we became one of the on-call consultants for BCRP, the charge was really to think about an environmental and a recreational and a kind of cultural use for this lake. And unfortunately, that's something the DPW plans didn't go too far with. So it achieved a lot of benefits on the left, restored the loop, that is the #1 thing that folks want. It introduced an amphitheater on the western shore, but it didn't provide a lot of recreational access or go too far in terms of rethinking what the edge of the lake was. And we do see it as a loss, that we kind of lost some of the beautiful, sinuous, romantic gesture of the lake itself. So the design challenges here were pretty big, and if you go to the next slide, the vision plan, which we delivered in 2021 with a lot of public engagement in person in the great outdoors and also online, was to create something a little bit more tied to the picturesque landscape of Druid Hill Park, but also incorporating major environmental and social benefits and access most of all. Next slide. So we've met with all of these agencies, courtesy reviews with all of these agencies. Next slide. The challenge of this project is to bring them all together. And then if you go one more, not only that, we're bringing the state to the table as well. So we're probably a first-name basis with everybody on this slide so far, and really trying to kind of get a lot of folks around the table to align the vision, align the funding, as Adam said, and so far it's going really well. Next slide. We did do pretty significant public and stakeholder engagement in 21, 3 rounds of significant engagement with online and in-person options, multiple rounds of surveying. This was sort of on the tail end of the pre-Omicron COVID wave, so we had a lot of good time outside in person. And then we also did quite a lot of stakeholder and advocacy one-on-ones and kind of small group stakeholder and listening sessions. Next slide. To cut to the chase of what we heard from the public, the #1 thing that folks want back is the loop. I mean, it's like frustrating to no end to have a U-shaped path that doesn't connect. So that is fundamental, and that's something we want to deliver. The other things were kind of stacked up, you can kind of see pretty evenly. And we were surprised that actually top of the list was swimming and boating. We're really high on the list. And you may have seen just last week an article in the Times about how the best thing we can do for public health in a warming climate is provide great swimming access. So it's a really exciting time to be thinking about providing swim and rec access to this beautiful, clean, cool, deep body of water, in addition to all of our wonderful facilities. Next slide. So this is a quick look, bird's eye, at the vision plan. You'll see a lot of exciting new components here, green living shorelines, a beautiful bridge that crosses the lake, incorporating islands. That's not just an unknown studio idea. That's very tied to the picturesque tradition. You see those up in the Boat Lake and other beautiful Olmstedian era landscapes. And then, of course, the restored loop. Next slide. I'm going to fly through a few before and afters. The lake is beloved, no doubt, but the shoreline itself is inaccessible. So you can loop it, but you can't get down to it. So if you go to the next slide, in the future, we're trying to incorporate all kinds of access over, to, on, and you'll see boating. We don't have really the size for larger craft like crew or sailing, so we're incorporating more human-powered craft, kayaks, paddle boats, dragon boats. And you also see in this image a swimming area and a cafe boathouse. The North Shore really becomes the necklace for program, both a boathouse and an environmental center, which lines up with East Drive and then kind of terminates at Park and Rec's headquarters. Next slide. Here's what it looks like on the East Shore today. And then that's great. In the future, you can see how we have the loop restored all around and then different kinds of shoreline conditions, some soft, some hard, so that there's access down to the water itself. And you just see the boathouse there in the distant background. Next slide. We've been doing quite a lot of study of precedents of urban swimming areas. Go to Minneapolis or Lake Placid. You know, there's lots of wonderful cities that have swimming right in their downtowns. And so it's a kind of question of operations and size and also shallowness. So we're thinking about how we raise the bottom of the lake at certain areas to have shallow ends and deep ends and lap lanes and all the rest. So we've been taking a close look at that in the technical phase. Next slide. And then there's this incredible opportunity. This is the ultimate top of the city moment. Of course, we're sitting here at one of the highest points in the city. That's why the reservoir is there in the first place. And so you get this incredible view to the Moorish Tower. And if it's a clear day, which hasn't been as much recently, you can see all the way to the port. Next slide. There's a really fabulous environmental benefit to connect the stormwater of the whole lake and think of this systemically. So by connecting to the watershed, we're going to charge the lake with great habitat potential and nutrients. So it's no longer a sterile bathtub, and I love that line, as Adam said, but it will become a really wonderful habitat for turtles and birds and other migratory waterfowl. Next slide. So here's a look at what that looks like to connect. If you come in now, if you look to the left, there's a stand of yellow pines that gets kind of daylit, and this stream goes all the way up to the boat lake. Next slide. Access. This is the number one thing. This is a slide from Tool Design showing what access looked like into the park in 27. And then after the JFX and the Druid Park Lake Drive went in, you see how diminished it is. And it doesn't even get to the level of how horrendous it is on the ground to cross Druid Park Lake Drive. So access to the park is as important as what we do inside the park. Next slide. The existing condition could not take a worse photo than this one. And then the improved condition looks so good in contrast here. So this was something we worked closely with in dialogue with DOT, and this informed their plan as well. And so we're really loving the direction now where we have room for trees and the right soil volumes and multimodal pathways on both sides before you actually go up to the lake itself. So here's what it looks like today, up above, or a few months ago, and then into the future. So the tanks themselves, you can still sort of recognize the footprint of that, but we've kind of pushed and pulled on the topography and the planting and the daylighting of streams to have this entire thing feel much more contextual with the park and the picturesque landscape, including wonderful access to the lake. Next slide. This is very detailed, but we're just about halfway through schematic, which is the beginning of our document and technical phase. I won't go into this in detail. It's a couple years until this thing is ready to go to bid. And there's quite a lot of work still to do, but we're really getting going on the kind of engineering and stormwater and maritime edge engineering. Next slide. Roughly, we've been thinking about early phases really being consolidated on the west. That's because that's where it's easiest to get the access and the shallow waters that we need for good, safe swim and boating access. It's also outside of the Puddle Core Dam, which is everything on the east. So we don't want to mess with that, of course. And then in future phases, there's an opportunity for coordinating with DOT on the drive and also getting an outdoor education kind of terminus to that string of programs on the east side. Next slide. Okay, so that's the overview. We're going to go very quickly through the 15% design and then have some time for some questions. So here you can see a few changes. We've been really carefully kind of looking at the earthwork and tailoring the size of those islands. We're actively talking to DPW about reusing the cofferdam that is part of their construction to build our project. So we're trying to be really kind of thrifty on how that project rolls into our project. We just met with them yesterday on that. We all want to save money and build smart. We've also been really carefully contouring and thinking about the shaping of those tanks so that it doesn't just feel like kind of two discs sitting on top of this beautiful Piedmont topography, which Nick will talk more about. Next slide. So I'll talk about access. This is a view from the vision plan. So there's lots of different ways to get down. If you go to the next slide, you can see how we've started regrading the lake bottom. So getting into some bathymetry here, you can see it goes down pretty deep. The lake gets to about 80 feet in the east. But everywhere here in the kind of recreational zone, we've regraded it and brought it up to be quite shallow. That's a safety consideration for folks to make sure that nobody's going to kind of fall into deep water right off the path. We want these paths to be guardrail free on the west side. So we're right on the water's edge. You can fish, you can wade. And then at the swimming area where you see the dock itself, it's really suitable for little ones to be playing in the shallow area and also deeper lap swimming, which is an important swim skill that everybody needs to be able to have an opportunity to access. This just takes a kind of look at what are the different ways to get down to the water. So we have ADA pathways and spurs that take us to these different kind of moments, kind of edge of the water perches. And then next slide. You can kind of see some nice precedents here. It doesn't always mean that there's connectivity across the water, but there's always ADA accessibility to the water. This diagram just shows, you can see again the complexity on the west side where we have ADA highlighted in pink. So lots of different ways to get up and down, universally accessible, and then there's a kind of second layer of rocky scrambles and softer areas, which are, the rocky scramble is a really robust way to think about that lakefront in an urban condition. Next slide. We do intend to keep the entire east side of the lake guardrailed. So because it gets quite deep there, we don't expect swimming or boating, launching from the entire east side. So the action's really on that kind of west and northwest. Okay, a couple more things and then I'll turn it to Nick. Adding activity, so boating and swimming here at the boathouse and the cove. That's the kind of area where we currently have that nice big patch of Phragmites and some of the cherries and some of the construction is happening. It's a kind of beautiful bowl. And so we're extending the lake a little bit into that area and then you can see how the daylighted stream goes up to the northwest. Next slide. Here's another view, just looking back. This bridge is probably going to get a little bit slimmed up. Next slide. And then the last piece I'll mention is play. So of course, boating and swimming are a kind of play, but then there was a kind of idea that came from Director Moore about why don't we consider destination play within the park itself. So when you scan the park, there's wonderful opportunities throughout, but we thought there was still an opportunity to create a kind of destination play area that had a kind of water connection here. So if you go one more slide forward. In the kind of upper right, it looks like a kind of where those triangle hatches are. We've created a zone for water play. So this would be a kind of flow-through system where kids in their suits who don't want to be swimming can get wet and play with the different kind of water machines. And it's right by the cafe and very importantly, the changing rooms and the bathrooms. Next slide. So these are some nice precedents and some different kinds of equipment we've worked with before. We want it to be quite naturalistic, so it looks nice in the winter when it's empty and when the water's drained. Next slide. But lots of really interesting kinds of learning opportunities here about physics and hydrology, and of course it's just kind of mesmerizing to stay and play with a little bit of water over the course of a day. I'll turn it to Nick.
Great. So as Claire mentioned, that first and foremost, the public, everyone we talk to really just wants to get the loop back. They want to be able to circulate around the lake. They're walking or biking. It's one of the most beloved lakes for that kind of recreation in Baltimore City, period. So really looking at the way it had been previously, obviously we've lost this big portion of the lake and a lot of the form and shape of the lake on the western side. If you go to the next slide, we're working to reintroduce a lake loop, and the bridges over the lake provide a really wonderful way, dramatic way of kind of getting out there and experiencing that and creating a kind of secondary zone in the northwest part of the lake that's in a kind of calmer and more protected So really thinking through the hierarchy of all these pathways, really being able to get you to all these active programs along the West Shore. Next slide, please. You could keep going, Ren. Yeah, this is where we've spent a lot of our time, is working in great detail with our technical engineering team on how our project is going to dovetail with the DPW project. There's a lot of constraints. It's this critical infrastructure. So we've been really working around a whole slew of potable drinking water infrastructure related utilities. And if you go to the next slide. As Claire mentioned, some of the challenges of the early scheme is it really just feels like a utilitarian landscape. It feels pretty foreign within the context of the rolling Piedmont topography. If you go to the next slide. So we've kind of taken a zoomed out perspective on that. You know, we're in the fall line, which is where the Piedmont meets the coastal plain here in Baltimore. And there's just like an incredible kind of juxtaposition of those two kinds of landscapes. And so we've tried to bring that back. If you go to the next slide, and really bringing back some element of the topography back on the tanks, and we're looking at innovative ways of introducing lightweight structural fill on the tank so that we can get a little bit of topography, which not only fits better within the park, but also provides opportunities for program. Next slide, please. So this is a view, of those same two tanks with kind of where we're at now in the 15% design.
North is to the left on this slide.
Yep, you can see the lakeshore up plan north. And then super important, the drive has really been cut off, and as have the historic entrances into the park. I mean, it's just kind of insane that you can only exit through the Madison Gateway, and the Utah Gateway's like been completely lost essentially. And so we've started thinking just in short term and in long term kind of how we can reintegrate those, and recognizing it's a bigger endeavor with DOT to really think about redoing the drive, the whole kind of complete streets. But we've been working with the bike planners and to really do some tactical things, like if we can get northbound traffic going through Madison Gateway along Cloverdale, for example, and then this Utah Gateway that we've introduced at the north end, at the terminus of Utah Street, really trying to connect these two roadways back to the park and provide that easy connectivity. Next slide, please. Just some other ideas about how the Utah Plaza could get integrated and work around the traffic, kind of weaving together all these modes of transit. And this is a slide we made early in the vision plan, which was just like a kind of overview of all the sort of underutilized land. A lot of that's it is owned by developers, is kind of waiting for something to happen here. But there are some large parcels, particularly on the west end, that may in long term not be their highest and best use. We really see that there's an opportunity for this project to help kind of provide uplift and investment in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And one of the real treasures of working on this project is just realizing, that we're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants of all these politicians and really Baltimore residents who grew up spending time in this park and have really strong memories of it, from our current mayor to Senator Hayes and the council members. It's just been incredible to have this opportunity to contribute to this project. Next slide, please. And sort of throwing this in here, Ren from the planning department pulled this together, but just, we really see that there's a lot of critical mass of local investment in the neighborhood, and are great to be here in front of you to sort of talk about the contribution that Druid Hill Park can make. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand it back to Claire.
Goody, okay.
She can do the fun part.
Last slide here. So we've been designing with an eye towards thrift, as I mentioned. We want to do this right. We want to build it for the next century, but we also want to be very mindful that this is a large public park and kind of understand what it's going to take to do it right without overbuilding and over-designing. That said, these are some big numbers. Adam already mentioned that we've received gratefully $17 million from the state towards this project. We're trying to define in the next task, which we'll gear up with this fall, what is the right combination for phase one. We think it's some combination of these western shoreline projects, likely the Tanks landscape, which is that 31.8. Hopefully, also possibly the North Shore and North Cove, which is that 24.9, and we'll keep going if we can. So we'll see where we get to. Next slide. That's it. So thanks. I think we went maybe 2 or 3 minutes over, but I hope we covered it.
No, you all did a great job.
Thank you. We
Very much.
love to hear your questions.
Questions, starting off with Commissioner Collins. By the way, I probably should have said this before you started. I should have said this before you started. If you don't know, Marcia Collins is with our DPW.
Aha.
So I was a little bit concerned when you were going sterile and talking about DPW.
It was meant to
I
be
was like,
sterile.
"Ooh."
It was drinking water.
But
It's supposed to be
with
A
sterile.
plus.
I know.
Yeah.
With that, Marcia, do you have any questions, comments?
I appreciate the presentation. I think that,
Need rubber bands.
I check back with my folks in DPW, and I know that you've been meeting regularly with them and others, DOT. I always appreciate Adam Borman, and he's a great person to work with, so we're very pleased that he's going to be involved in this particular project. It is true that it is challenging to work with circles in a natural environment. However, circles is the way we build tanks because it's the most efficient way. And I do understand that the surface over those tanks, we have a certain need for access, and they were built to contain water, not to hold structures. So I understand that challenge. The issue on the west side, you have some very interesting ideas for that area, for the shallow parts. So the east side, which is where the earthen dam exists, I'm just curious what the plans are there, because we know we're very limited by state law, what you can and can't do within an earthen dam area. Who is the ultimate caretaker of the dam?
Yeah, I will take a crack at this. So if I guess first starting with the first question about kind of how to activate the east side of the lake. There's some subtle things that are drawn there that we haven't really highlighted in this plan. We're fortunate to have biohabitats on our team who helped design and build the floating wetlands that are next to the aquarium and have done a whole slew of things like similarly like that. So we're hoping to be a little bit more innovative on the dam side, where we might have floating wetlands, things that are not structurally anchored to the dam, don't jeopardize the dam in any way. We're expecting that the dam portion of the lake is going to be pretty close to as is now. Even putting trees on within the Puddle Core Dam is a no-go. So
that is correct.
that's kind of like, we see this as a giant loop. Folks are going to get some sun on one side of it. By the time they get around to the west side, they're going to be in this really comfortable shaded space again.
Can I have one more thing?
Sure.
I think the other thing, and it's again very subtle in this plan, is to kind of reconsider the paving and the edge condition. So it's probably a phase 2, but right now there's a pretty foreboding cast iron fence that goes above your head. It's not really required, so possibly someday a kind of more gracious balustrade could encircle the lake on that side. And then kind of starting to kind of think about traffic on that side. What's the fast lane? What's the slow wheeled lane? What's the walking lane? It's kind of every man for themselves over there right now.
Yeah.
So we'd like to start kind of breaking that down and think about pavement and speed and use on that side.
What's the structure over there?
The structure of the dam itself.
No, there's a vertical structure that comes out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that is really known as the Moorish Tower. It was one of the original monuments built within the park. So are you talking about in the lake itself, or?
No, like where
Yeah.
you have this bump out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's one of the most iconic and sort of beloved destinations in the park. People just go there just to take in the view and to kind of feel like, you're on the edge of the city. So we really want to preserve that and, put it, yeah.
It's been forever since I've been up there. Can you get in that structure, or is it a statue?
I think historically you could get in it. We'd love to see some restoration happen, lighting, make it more accessible. Yeah, and that's kind of like further out in terms of our focus. But the other things that I'll just say quickly is all the ramps that are really cutting into that dam as well. The off ramps from I-83, a lot of that we call it the spaghetti there. It's not shown on this plan, but it's really compromised that whole edge of the park, which was designed by the Olmsted brothers, way of connecting down. So that's sort of longer term, trying to fix that up so that Mount Royal Terrace can once again connect and all these neighborhood streets can once again connect. But Marcia, the other answer to your question about the sort of who has jurisdiction over this, I mean, it's our understanding it's ultimately going to be MDE and DPW will be the kind of local. DPW is going to have a stake in the lake in perpetuity. It basically setting the lake level and the operation of the tanks. So it's going to be kind of really hand in glove with Rec and Parks, who's going to be working on the land side, and Maryland Department of Environment will really have the ultimate jurisdiction over the project.
I mean, they're the regulator. I mean, but I was curious about who's going to be routinely inspecting the dam area. I mean, that's a requirement. That's what I'm asking.
But you're the owner, right? I mean, DPW owns that. Well, mayor and city council own it, but.
Mayor and city council owns it. I mean, it's from a utility usage, it is not necessary once we have the tanks. So that's why I'm asking, because it's an important, it's no longer part of the water system. And it is, you cannot fool around with dams. So I think that was one of the first earthen dams built in the United States.
Yeah.
So I'm just, it's something, I'm sure conversations will be happening, but, when you have dams like that, you have to walk it on a routine basis to make sure everything's okay. So we don't want to take out JFX and everybody who lives on the other side of the JFX. So I'm sure that'll be part of the MOUs that get worked out eventually. But I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Allen.
It was an excellent presentation, and as a nearly lifelong resident of Baltimore City, I am so glad to see these extensive plans for the reservoir. It has a storied history, so it's good to see something very positive planned for it. You mentioned towards the end of your presentation about, I think it was Nick, about the entrances or entrance and exit historic to the park. I don't know if this would be something that you all could or would address, but there's been a lot of concern from the residents of Alcantara Terrace and the community south of there about really their inability to access the park safely, if at all. Is there any plan to address that, or is that outside of your purview?
Yeah, it really is outside of our direct kind of project scope. We, as Claire was describing, like during the vision planning process, we worked really closely with the DOT team who was simultaneously doing their complete street study. We are very eager to pursue federal grants for this project as a joint venture, thinking that we could actually achieve a lot of the transportation infrastructure within this design, as well as the Druid Lake Expressway at the same time. So we're trying to do that, and we're just having open dialogue with their team about this. And we, as Claire pointed, some images we created, really just to try to help envision what it could become. But yeah, we really believe that kind of traffic calming, slowing things down, there are no ADA accessible crossings currently. Our project team took its life in our hands crossing on the first kickoff, and it's still a problem today. So absolutely agree that our project won't succeed unless we can get the drive in much more kind of human neighborhood scale again.
Commissioner, I would add, last year, we worked with the Department of Transportation on a federal reconnecting community grant for the Highway to Nowhere. Successfully worked for that, a planning grant. And we've talked to the director in the Department of Transportation, and our plan is to apply for a second reconnecting community grant in this upcoming year for this project.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
Echo the other commissioners' comments and appreciate the presentation. One question about the gateway, which I hadn't realized, I only drive north and hadn't realized its significance. On Madison Avenue, I guess, I'm assuming it'd be expensive, but was there talk about moving it to have the more, I guess, prestigious entrance like on the north side of Druid Lake Avenue?
Druid Lake Park Drive, something like that.
Because right now it's blocked by, well, I thought they wanted northbound traffic too, so I guess, well.
That's on Utah.
Is
The
that Utah?
northbound's on Utah, and the southbound's on Madison.
So I saw, maybe I misremembered it, but.
You're talking
So-
about the arches, the
About
stone arched.
physically relocating it?
Well, it seemed like you wanted to give it more prominence, and I
Yeah.
guess it didn't seem like it had it. Or what was your,
It's a drive, you can drive through it now.
right, but I guess was
I don't
there,
think you can.
you're just showing it as like a pressing, because it's right at Madison and not,
This is it, right here.
There's,
Yeah.
right. Right, so I guess that's what,
Right now, what I'm hearing you say is.
well, I was
southbound,
thinking,
that's
okay,
northbound.
yeah, that's what threw me off with the directional.
It's all southbound through Madison Arch currently.
Right.
So
You're
they're
showing it
actually
that there's
reducing,
two-way.
They're reducing traffic at Utah, making that a right turn only. And then to get in the park, you make a left down that small street and you'd have two-way traffic at Madison.
Should go through the
And
arch.
this,
Yes.
this solution is sort of pokes at a bigger question about these one-way couplets, throughout, in this neighborhood, 28th, 29th Street, Madison, Utah. I know
You
there's,
want to go there?
no, we're not going there. But this allows you to enter the park through the gateway. And we're also, I don't think we're really showing it here, but if the Complete Streets project is able to narrow the drive significantly and make it a safe crossing, I think we're, feel like that the gateway could be once again back in a prominent spot. It doesn't feel like it's literally cut off from the park.
Can I just add one more thing? We did talk about physically moving it, and we
Yeah.
never had a structural engineer come give us an assessment on that, but, the park didn't move, the road came through it. So we sort of felt like, really like the park should be reclaiming its own acreage. So Druid Park Lake Drive is in the park. Let's make it a parkway. Let's not ask the monument to move. It should be there. So we're just looking for solutions to restore something closer to what it was.
And then a two-part question, maybe it's more planning for, do we know what the plan is, if any, for 825? There's a vacant lot on the south side looking, that 36,000 square foot.
That has been put out there so many times for RFP by DEC. I think it's, I mean, I can tell you, I personally looked at that property with a developer 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And it was, no, it's, that one's already out, part of our vacancy to values program or whatever it was at that particular point in time. So I'm shocked to see that it's still city-owned.
I believe one of the three have been awarded, but I'm not sure which one.
What I'm building towards is, while we have this great team on call, would it be feasible to expand, to have them visualize and think through what would make sense from development on this parcel, so we could package it?
Ask Ren here, when you did the map, did you look at these parcels and figure out what the status of them was? Ren did the bird's eye view.
Your slide is in here. There you go.
Yeah, that one. So that's intended to show all the activity in the area and the connections between them. No, she just
So
right.
she just got it.
Yeah, the Linden development, is that a David Bramble?
So this is a compilation of things that are both city initiatives and public and private proposed development along with ongoing plan and additional initiatives throughout this part of West Baltimore. The Linden did come for design review. I don't know where that project is in the pipeline, but it was included on this map draft a couple of years ago, right after it had been to the Urban Design and Architecture Advisory Panel. It was included because it had gone through public design review, and as far as I know, it has not been back for a second review. I don't know where that development is in process.
And Justin, I don't know if you know, there were mansions, I think there were 3 along that property historically. And about 25 years ago, I presented a city council bill here to the commission at that time for historic designation of a wall, I think it was, for a garden that had existed for one of those properties. Doesn't look like the wall's still there.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Vice Chair Stevenson.
Thank you. No questions. I'd just like to say that I think that the plan and the work so far is exceptional. I think, everyone who has worked on it is clearly swinging for the fences, and I think Baltimore deserves a park of that scale. Having lived in Philadelphia, the comparison to Fairmount Park really resonates with me. And I'll be disappointed if we're not collectively able to achieve all that.
Commissioner Horn.
Great presentation. Couple questions. So I don't know if Adam would be the most appropriate person to answer this, but just a funding question in terms of total cost and where we are in terms of funding and where primarily the sources of funding are coming from.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the commission has been supportive. We've been to the CIP a couple times now. We've had local city bonds that have paid for the design fee to this point, and I believe in this current fiscal year 24, we put together some program open space money from the state. Collectively, I think we're in the like $3 million range. So between that and the $17 million commitment from in state bonds, we're roughly about 20 million in at this point. So we got a ways to go, and if you look at the scale of the hard costs, thinking 10 to 15% for design and soft costs, I mean, it all adds up pretty quickly. But last time I spoke with Senator Hayes, he has intentions of going to session next year and continuing to push on his end. Looking at what we received locally at the CIP, this is more than we can ever handle unless we just stop everything for 10 years. So between those federal level infrastructure grants and things of that nature and help from the state, I think that's kind of where we gotta aim. Our team is being creative. We're looking at environmental opportunities and things of that nature. So there's money out there. We just got to keep looking for it.
Thank you. And then I have another question for you, and I don't want to put you on the spot. And so this question is not necessarily about this particular project, but earlier today we had a great presentation with planning staff with the Govins Inspired Plan, and there's another park on the other side of the city, DeWeese Park. And similar to how Druid Hill Park is the anchor for this area, DeWeese Park is the anchor for sort of that York Road corridor, and similarly to how you're kind of focusing dollars on Druid Park. Planners were telling us that the community really would like some additional investment in Dewey's Park, and they said that, that investment might come 6 years from now. And so the question I have is sort of what's your plan for Dewey's, and is there a way in which we can move up that investment? It seems like we could take advantage of the momentum of the new school, the library, and the park, and a lot of the economic development investments that you're doing along the corridor. So that's my question. Don't want to put you on the spot, but I didn't want to wait till CIP to ask you that.
So to their credit, the community over there and specifically the York Road Partnership have been very active. They engage their own master planning process. I wish I could say the department was heavily involved with that, so we're kind of playing catch up. But we are actively improving that. We've already installed a futsal court. We're about to renovate some basketball courts over there, the playgrounds, walking loop, and a memorial garden. So basically, we are working hand in hand with them on kind of flushing out that master plan. I don't think we had any money in the CIP for '24, but in the coming years, we are identifying opportunities to see that through.
Thank you. Just want to reiterate, anything that you can do to kind of prioritize that'd be great.
Understood.
I think that's probably going to come back up in your January CIP presentation.
Probably.
Probably put an asterisk next to that one. Commissioner McCoach.
Thanks. It's a really inspiring plan. It's really exciting, and I think it really, all of its genesis based on all good ideas. My only caution, because I mean this looks like it will be a fantastic change. Will Department of Rec and Parks have operating funds that are consistent with the level of improvement here? It seems like there's a potential for a great expansion of amenities for our citizens, but it would be a shame if they could only be open periodically.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that is, to their credit, something that Unknown Studio has brought to us as precedents of other jurisdictions and parks that have managing bodies and private groups and nonprofits that help to manage and operate these big projects. Currently, we're exploring all that. I know my Director Moore, and the mayor are, sometimes reluctant to kind of give anything away. But I would totally agree with you that we need to be innovative and creative to see that this thing is operated and maintained at high level. Because frankly, that's something that is often a challenge for me. We build it, and then sometimes it's not reaching its full potential afterwards. So it is a challenge, and it's something we're trying to figure out.
Commissioner Jones.
What a wonderful presentation. Thanks so much. And I think it speaks for this presentation to say that all of our comments are kind of on the outside of the scope that we provided for us today. So I think that's where my comments lie. It really is the gateway part of it, as the Deputy Mayor said, and also the connectivity from the neighborhood just south and looking how that works with DOT in this project as well. It's just a comment. I would love to see more about how that neighborhood, the gateways, and getting to the space, maybe again, like you said, that's outside of your purview, but more conversation on how people get there, specifically the neighboring parts of that, and how DOT is going to work with, because as you said, the current situation and the picture that you provided, and the future of that, I think that is something that I would love to see going forward as well. But that's my only comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. First, I want to thank BCRP, from Director Moore to Mr. Borman to Ms. Torres. Thank you very much for reaching out and asking for us to put this on our agenda. I greatly appreciate your thinking ahead and showing the commission where the capital dollars are being spent, which is great. Second, I want to thank the team, the Unknown Studio team. You guys have done a phenomenal job. It's a great plan. It's very, very, I think, realistic, but also very ambitious in some ways. So I think that's fantastic. My only comment regarding the plan is, I really wish we could get rid of Druid Hill Park Drive entirely. So I would make that thing 2 lanes, 20 feet wide, and just make it as porous as possible from every single neighborhood around it, across it, and to the park, where that automobile really becomes so just out of sight. I would literally, I mean, I think that's a demand of DOT. It's not a, hey, what do you guys think? It's no, this is the way this needs to be to reconnect these communities back to this park. Because it is the most appropriate thing. Obviously, as you further go east, because of the topography and whatnot, nobody's gonna cross over there. So as it comes into 83 and that spaghetti bowl over there, I can understand maybe transportation needs taking a higher precedent than the recreational needs. Doesn't matter, you're not gonna ask people to cross over there. But once you get from Utah over, I mean, to me, all of that stuff, even, by the way, all the way up to the zoo. Because that roadway, the way it's currently designed, is horrendous. And it is just a speed zone for people where you want to make it as slow as possible. So you guys have done a great job. I think it's on this commission and everybody to look at DOT and say, hey, let's make this, really accessible. Now, having said that, my only concern is this is a great plan. Middle Branch Park is a great plan. You got a lot of things hopping right now, and it's just like, okay, we've got a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of things that are being, in this planning stage and design stage right now. I just don't want to have to pick a horse. I would like actually all of these things to, come to fruition. Because I don't want to go back out to the community here or the community over in Middle Branch and say, sorry, we can't implement that. So I think that's the only thing that, in the CIP coming forward, and the 2025 CIP, I think that's something we really need to look at. What would help inform that, and I know, Mr. Borman, you and I have talked about this before, is we've talked about the recreation master plan for the city. And I think having that as a guidance, I'm going to kind of just reiterate, maybe we need to step up or step back and look at the greater, what's happening in the city, where are people moving from and to, the equity considerations for our parks and where they are right now. I think that'll help inform what you have is you got a really full plate, and I just want to make sure that we can implement it all for the residents of the city. So there's no answer to that. It's just a comment, but thank you all very, very much. Greatly appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you guys maybe at the 75% design completion.
Fabulous.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, moving on with our agenda.
Next item on the agenda is a major subdivision final plan at 3801 South Hanover Street in the 10th Councilmatic District. Eric Tiso will present.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Eric Tiso presenting on behalf of Matt DeSantis, who a couple hours ago is on his way to someplace with palm trees, and I'm jealous. So this is a major subdivision for 3801 South Hanover Street.
You've advised him not to play pickleball down.
Yeah, he's a little bit younger than me, so he can probably handle it. So that's why I'm in a cast and he's not. We'll give it just a quick second for the slides to catch up, sorry. You can go ahead and move forward.
While you're waiting for those, you can vote on the CIP transfers.
Oh, yeah, while we're waiting.
Oh, yeah. While we're waiting for that. Thank you very much, Sarah. I handed out
Mike,
CIP transfers. for
microphone,
the July
microphone.
19th, 2023 meeting.
Mr. Chair, you need your microphone on.
There are a total of 7 CIP requests. Most of them are consistent with CIP, with the exception of 3. One is from the Department of Public Works for $11 million. It's for CCTV. Department Works? Not consistent with the CIP. This contract is associated with a modified consent decree that must be completed by the deadline of 2024. Then we have about $700,000 that is not considered. This project supports construction projects associated with a modified consent decree. And then finally, on the last page, item number 7, it's $90,000 in total for Department of Recreation and Parks. Not considered using building renovation funding, which is meant for this type of work, just not this project. The other projects in the CIP for this funding are not progressing at this time. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the 7 items on this one? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. Second? Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, sir. All right, we up and running? Back to you, Mr. Tissot.
Alrighty, we're here for a major subdivision. You can move to the next one. So here is the overall area of 3801 South Hanover. The next slide, I'll start to zoom us in. There's the parcel. It's about 4,600 square feet. Maybe one more in. There it is. So on Hanover Street, there are 3 attached structures that were at one point in time on their own separate lots. They were consolidated at some point in time in the dim past, and somewhere in the 70s, that warehouse building on the rear of the property on Washburn Avenue, which would be towards the right, that brighter roof, was built on what used to be the backyard. So this is a request to subdivide the 3 front homes to be on their own, and for that new warehouse building to be on its own. If we advance one more, I realized I can't reach it. So there's the 3 fronts, the 2 brick and the 1 beside it. And then the next slide will have the reverse angle for the rear warehouse building on Washburn. And then this shows the existing conditions, which will remain the same. So we're just adding invisible property boundaries, leaving the structures as they are, no construction or changes. And this is the subdivision plan, inserting the 3 former east-west lines between 3801, 3, and 5, and then adding a new one to separate that rear warehouse building to be on a new lot, number 111. Since this was, a subdivision for existing structures, our routine development reviews like site plan review committee, design review, landscape, critical area forest conservation, none of those apply since nothing is changing on the site. All that was necessary were a couple of setback variances, which were approved by the Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals back on October 31st of last year, because those lot lines, when they get reimposed, those lots are technically new creations, and so they had to be reapproved. So this otherwise meets all the requirements for the rules for subdivision and for notice. The concerned citizens of Better Brooklyn and Greater Baybrook Alliance were notified. It was posted in accordance with the timeline for subdivisions and met that requirement. For the equity analysis, since there's no new development proposed, we're hoping that the reversion of the residential structures back into row home lots will potentially spur reinvestment and reuse of those buildings. Otherwise, we don't believe that there would be any particular negative impacts. And with that, staff is recommending approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tissot. Are there any questions from the commission for Mr. Tissot, starting with you, Commissioner Jolin? Commissioner McCoach?
No questions.
Commissioner Horn?
No questions.
Vice Chair Stevenson?
Couple questions.
I'll do my best.
What is the current zoning?
The stand by. We're gonna have to look that up. Won't give me 1 second.
Hold on.
Or the Mr. Schmidt. Is it
And
C? Okay, okay. We have it as C2 on Code Map.
so I'm
That's what it's
guessing
showing on Code Map here.
perhaps because it's C2, this is not an issue, but there's no issue created by the fact that 1803 or 3803 doesn't have any alley access.
Not from, well, actually, that was one of the reasons why a rear yard variance was necessary, because whether there's a rear alley or not changes the rear yard setbacks.
So a rear alley is not required.
It's not required, but it does affect
does
the
if you-
depth of yard.
Okay. So technically, that building could touch the warehouse building. under building code and under zoning code, but you would need a variance to a rear yard setback.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? You said a couple questions.
Those were tied to each other, but I think because it's C2, the lack of setbacks and the buildings abutting each other is more acceptable than if it were to be R8.
And it's gonna be, there's no development proposed at this time. I'm sure the reason for the subdivision is, properties are gonna be sold off and, things are gonna happen, I would assume. Otherwise, why would they be subdividing? Deputy Mayor Williams.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Collins.
Do we have any idea why this is configured the way it is currently? Was there some idea at some point, somebody's mind? It seems so peculiar to me. When I was looking at what we received, there was this 15-foot weird easement or right-of-way, and I didn't know if that was intended to be an alleyway, but if these were the backyards that this commercial structure got built on, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure
How that would work.
the history of these, but Mr. Shimoniak's the engineer for the project. He's here. I don't know if you have any thought on its historic development. You're welcome to.
Well,
Okay,
I'll say
well,
before-
I can
Okay.
wait for my answer. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I have no further questions. So with that, we'll close our discussion, open up the public hearing. Now, would you come on up and help address Commissioner Collins' question? And take your time, because we're dealing with this with Mr. Tiso as well, so.
We've known each other for a long time. I didn't know we had this in common today. Good afternoon. I am Stephen Shimoniak from Civil Unlimited. And to be quite honest with you, I do not understand how that back property got built. I do know that the interior lines that were once there, property lines, somehow they end in there. So you know how you, so here we are. The intention is just to sell in fee simple. And I don't have the history. However, we want to make sure that in the future here, that it provides not only the residential piece in the C1 or C2 zone, but also that back property can be actually used accordingly to anything in the zoning appropriate code. So
Thank you.
at least it's not just a building that's just vacant. We want to actually give an opportunity for someone that will buy that lot to actively use it. As you know, in that area, there's a lot of things happening right around Westport and developing. So that's the purpose of this project.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add after addressing Commissioner
No, it's
Collins?
just good to see everybody.
Nice to see you. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this agenda item?
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Well, fine, but more probably planning. Is there gonna be an issue with the width of the lots? Thinking if we need to grant a waiver or something, because it's less than 16 feet?
Existing structure.
I think because they're reestablishing.
Yeah, I
the
think we're okay.
original, It would have been a minor.
Yeah, I think the width requirement is not outlined here in the staff report in front of you as being something, so I think since it's a reestablishment, I think we're okay. But if it was a new undeveloped lot, that would be a different story. And then also, we do have folks online. I'm not sure if anybody online wishes to testify, but we'll ask them to raise their hands when we get to that point.
Okay. Does that address your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here in the room that would like to testify on this? Seeing none, would you ask anybody online if they would like to testify?
Yep, looks
on
like
this?
we have one hand from Andrea Mayer. I've sent the request for unmuting. You should be able to unmute from your side. All right, looks like you had it. We'll try one more time.
Yeah,
All right, go ahead and introduce yourself. Okay, I see Mike is acting there, but I'm not hearing anything on my end. No, I mean, well, she was off. Okay, so it looks like the folks online can hear each other, but we can't hear them here in the room. Okay, bear with us, folks. This is new technology. And worst case scenario,
They put it in chat.
yeah, there were some comments already in chat where she was saying that they didn't get notice. They had wanted a meeting with a developer. They had not reached out to anybody in the community. There's some concerns over the legal mechanic garage operating in that rear building, concerns along those lines.
So in hopes of answering your question, which I can't personally read, and not hearing you, this is just a subdivision plan. There is no development proposed at this point in time. So if there is any development or redevelopment of the site, they're going to have to come back before the city for at least a building permit, which would necessitate a review in accordance with these subdivision regulations, make sure that they're complying. And if there is an illegal use, I strongly recommend that if you believe that there is an illegal use. If there's an illegal use, then I would strongly recommend that you reach out to, I guess it would be zoning.
311 request and a zoning enforcement.
Yeah, it's 3-1 run request. So I hope that addresses your question. Is there anything else? All right. With that, I think we really need to get the technology down because it's a killer.
Yeah.
All right, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any comments, discussions, deliberations amongst the commission? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner McCoach. All right, Mr. Secretary, you call roll.
Robin Allen,
Approve.
Justin Williams,
Approve.
Doug McCoach,
Approve.
Marcia Collins,
Approve.
Talib Horn,
Approve.
Claudia Julin,
Approve.
Eric Stevenson,
Approve.
Sean Davis.
Approve. Next, we have
Next item on the agenda is City Council Bill number 23-0386, a landmark list for the Home of the Friendless in the 11th Councilmatic District.
This is a terrible name.
Lauren Skizit will present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Lauren Chiswick here presenting this item for you. This parcel is located in the 1300 block of Druid Hill Avenue in the Marble Hill neighborhood towards the middle of the block. West Landvale Street is the nearest cross street located to the southeast. And just to describe what you're looking at here, the light blue shows the boundaries of local historic districts. The green dots show the locations of local Baltimore City landmarks. So this would join a lot of friends. I do want to note pretty much this entire area is also within a National Register Historic District. However, that doesn't offer any regulatory protections to properties. It means properties owners are eligible to get tax credits for doing work on their properties, but if they want to tear their building down tomorrow, they can. So that's why we're talking about local designation today. Little closer up view shows the location of the property. Located to the north of it is a park, and you can see there are row houses located next to the building and across the street. And also across the street is Bethel AME Church. This is actually an outdated photo. This aerial photo is from December 2022. So half a year ago, DHCD has buttoned up the roof. The building is a freestanding brick structure. It's 3 bays wide, 5 bays deep. Historically was 5 stories tall with a mansard roof. As you can see here, the mansard roof has been removed. Over the past few decades, it suffered from vacancy, structural damage, general deterioration, and is in poor condition. DHCD is currently stabilizing the building. This is a current photo. It was designed in the Second Empire style. It was constructed in 1870. You can tell, as designed, it was very ornate, with a lot of brick detailing. It had a lot of decorative details. But today it's missing the majority of those features. Some just from having fallen off, others from having been removed after being documented by DHCD prior to their removal so that they can be replicated in the future. You can see here, this is the north elevation and the rear elevation. And the conformity to plans. This designation, first history, there are no previous legislative or planning commission actions regarding this site, at least in recent history that I could find. And the designation request comes from the Department of Housing and Community Development, which seeks to designate the structure as a Baltimore City landmark following its $2.3 million stabilization of this property. The property is subject to the Upton Master Plan adopted in 2005, and the property is not subject to an urban renewal plan. The preservation of this building and the regulatory review of any exterior work proposed by a future owner will support the goals of the Upton Master Plan. The request also conforms to the goals and objectives of Baltimore City Comprehensive Master Plan, specifically Play Goal 1, strengthen stewardship of historical and cultural resources, and Live Objective 4, protect and enhance the preservation of Baltimore's historic buildings and neighborhoods. The Home of the Friendless, built in 1870, played an important role in the social services in West Baltimore through the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It was built as a residential institution for orphaned and abandoned white boys, and it was a corollary to the adjacent Home of Friendless Vagrant Girls, now demolished. It was part of a 3-building complex that housed between 100 and 200 children per year, and it served as an orphanage until 1931, when the institution moved to the suburbs in northern Baltimore City. From the late 1930s into the early 1960s, the health department ran the Druid Hill Center in this building, which was the first public health center for Black citizens in the city. The Home of the Friendless is the sole surviving structure from the original 3-building complex. The building has been owned by the City of Baltimore since 1938, has been vacant since 1992. DHCD in recent history sold the property for development in 2017, but the property was foreclosed on and purchased back by the city in 2018. In 2021, while the property was part of a new DHCD request for proposal process, the cornice fell from the roof onto Druid Hill Avenue during a storm. And at that time, the housing commissioner seized the RFP process until the building could be stabilized. And here we are. It took a few years to pull together the money needed to do that stabilization. But in 2022, DHCD began undertaking $2.3 million stabilization sourced from federal, state, and local funding. The stabilization is slated to be finished by late fall 2023. And as part of this process, in February 2023, the Development Division of DHCD requested that Councilman Costello introduce this landmark designation bill. And the goal is to designate the property as a Baltimore City landmark prior to selling it to a private developer for rehabilitation. So following the stabilization and landmark designation, it will again be listed for sale through the request for proposals process. But the city, state, federal funding and investment in this property will be protected by that designation. Just some eye candy while I talk at you. This is a second public hearing for this property as part of the Baltimore City Landmark Designation process. The first hearing was a June 13th, 2023 hearing of the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, during which the commission reviewed and recommended approval of landmark designation. And staff finds that the proposed designation will have positive impacts in terms of short and long-term equity, addressing patterns of inequity and community engagement, as well as authentic inclusion of residents in the process, in the planning process, as well as internal operations. Staff has notified Baltimore Heritage, Baltimore National Heritage Area, Madison Park Improvement Association, Marble Hill Improvement Association, and No Boundaries Coalition, all of whom were notified of this hearing, and the site was posted in accordance with the Planning Commission guidelines. And staff, for the previous CHAP hearing, staff did receive a positive letter of support from the Madison Park Improvement Association. And staff's recommendation is approval. Thank you, commissioners. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions, Commissioner Collins?
No questions.
Commissioner Allen?
Very interesting, thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams?
No questions, thank you.
Vice Chair Stevenson?
No questions, just that this is a great thing. It's long overdue. Credit to DHCD and the Upton community. I've personally watched this building decay for the better part of the last 10 years and thought for sure that, like too many others, we'd be lamenting after it was either demolished or succumbed to the elements. So very happy to see this building preserved and hope that we can take more proactive action on buildings like this in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner Horn?
I'm just curious, how large is the building, just a square footage?
Oh, gosh, I do not have that information at my fingertips, but I can get that to you.
Okay. Okay, I was just curious.
Commissioner McCoach?
Just want to thank the agency for striving to find mechanisms to promote the redevelopment of the building. I mean, it wasn't like, well, it's been 30 years since it was abandoned, and here it is, and thank goodness we've got a chance to get it into a different sort of setup. So, good job.
This is part of a working relationship that we're developing with DHCD, with planning and DHCD to talk about the properties that they own, these charismatic properties that they own, that they're trying to sell to the public, sort of thinking more strategically about how historic designation can be a tool for strengthening and stabilizing communities.
Commissioner Jones?
No comment, thank you.
I want to echo what Commissioner McCoach, I think you're doing it the right way. DHCD owns it.
Yep.
They invested money to stabilize it.
Yep.
We're designated it as a historic locally, so as to protect it. Then you put it out to bid.
Yeah.
So that when it goes out to bid, hopefully it's been stabilized, and hopefully $2.3 million is a good stabilization. And whoever buys it knows it's locally designated, and therefore they have to follow the rules.
Yep.
So, good job.
It's a good teamwork.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on behalf of this? Mr. Holcomb, you're just sitting? No, I'm just kidding. You don't need to speak. She's got it.
You got it.
Anyone else? Is there anyone online? Let's raise their hand.
Yep, and fortunately Ren is smarter than me and realized that she's logged in to share those slides, so we can probably hear audio from her computer, not overhead, so we can try it. So if anybody's in attendance on WebEx, please use the raise hand function now if you'd like to testify to this item. Okay, not seeing any hands, Mr. Chair.
Great. We'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, deliberations amongst the commission? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Williams.
Second.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Stevenson. Mr. Secretary, you call roll.
Robin Allen,
Approve?
Justin Williams,
Approve.
Doug McCoach,
Approve.
Marcia Collins,
Approve.
Talib Horn,
Approve.
Claudia Jolin,
Approve.
Eric Stevenson,
Approve.
and Sean Davis.
Approve.
Thank
you.
Thank you. I would note to the commissioners, more and more our historic buildings that are vacant have been vacant 30 years or 40 years. This is going to be an increasing problem and an increasingly expensive problem. So kudos to HCD for solving this one, but there are a lot of other ones out there. All right, next item on the agenda is City Council Bill number 23-0351, rezoning 1801 to 1803 Bloomingdale Road and 1800 to 1816 North Rosedale Street in the 7th Councilmatic District. Eric Tiso will present.
All right, good afternoon again. So this is a rezoning for these numerous properties from R8 residential to C1 commercial. This was introduced by Councilmember Torrance. So here is the almost triangular block of all of those addresses captioned there. So we look at the map for today, showing that dark green for the R8 with C2 to the west, C1 on North Avenue just above it to the north, and covering the greater part of the almost triangular block. And then I believe it's R7 in the lighter green surrounding further to the south. So looking at some aerials, again, the properties are highlighted there in yellow. And looking towards the north, you can see that sub-block there. Yep. And the other direction from the south, or looking south. All right, so if we look at the prior zoning, which was in effect up until the comprehensive rezoning of the city in 2017, these parcels were B2 to commercial. And as a part of the comprehensive rezoning of the city, it kind of reflected that there were predominantly residential structures on that southern half of that triangular shaped block. And so that southern half of the triangle was moved to R8 to reflect what was there at the time. If we overlay those two together, you can kind of see the red boundaries are the old zoning lines and the colors are the current zoning lines. Okay. All right, so we have a lot of things that we need to look at, whether it's a substantial change or a mistake. And again, the choice to try and make the zoning match the development that was there was rational in 2017, but very shortly after the comprehensive rezoning went into effect, all but one of the lots fronting on North Rosedale Street were cleared. And then the 1800 North Rosedale Street building had windows in its upper two floors of the main building boarded in 2019, and the largest part of it is now basically unused, with the only exception that one little rear piece. It's a non-conforming commercial corner store that's still active. We note that the liquor store component portion of it should have been amortized by now if it hasn't been. But that small portion of the building prevents the entirety of it from getting a vacant building notice. 3 of the 4 properties on Bloomingdale Street, that's the northwest southeast angled street, now have vacant building notices, leaving only 1807 Bloomingdale Road, which is occupied by a religious institution when they purchased the building in 2021. Okay, you can move forward. So when we start looking at some of the required findings of fact, when we look at population changes, the population has lost about 500 people from 2010 to 2020 in the Northwest Community Action neighborhood. And fortunately, vacant housing has seen a slight downward trend from 166 in 2010 to 134 in 2020. So that shift is generally showing us that preserving residential zoning assigned to these properties is not going to be critical and hopefully should not trigger a shortage of residential opportunities in the immediately surrounding neighborhood. As for availability of public facilities, it's well served by public facilities, and that's not anticipated to change. The existing infrastructure can support a wide range of potential pre-develop or redevelopment in the area. The present and future transportation patterns, we're not expecting any significant impacts there, regardless of commercial construction in the future, whatever that may look like. As for compatibility with existing and proposed development for the area, the C1 zone provides a wide range of commercial and frankly residential options, including all residential options. So we don't lose anything by moving away from R8 going to C1. If that's where the market wants to go, it's still an option, but it would open up the opportunities for commercial and still be that transition between the existing commercial corridor along West North Avenue and the residential area further to the south. Next slide. When we look at, okay, that's carrying on, keep going. Okay, so, yeah, other things looking at the plan, again, the comprehensive rezoning of the city back in 2017, we anticipated that the existing residential development, that portion of the block would largely remain as is into the future. Under the prior zoning, that entirety of that triangular block was B22 commercial, and was just rezoned to R8 to match, but then shortly after that happened, the buildings went away. So we didn't see that one coming. As far as the needs for the city, the properties are in a transition area between the commercial properties and the residential area, so there's no particular comprehensive plan or city goals that influence where that demarcation line is necessarily on either side. And for the needs of the particular neighborhood, and most likely the reason why the council member introduced this himself is to just spur some kind of opportunity for redevelopment to get these properties back into productive use, and hopefully that commercial zoning will give them a better chance at accomplishing that. So we think it meets all the required findings to justify a rezoning. For some equity notes, we think that it would return the options for commercial use to the block, and hopefully that will be a generally positive impact by getting these properties redeveloped. The council member was engaged with his constituents, and we believe that reflects the community's interest here. We don't anticipate any negative impacts on staff time. As for notifications, that went out to a variety of community organizations, including Coppin Heights CDC, Alliance of Rosemont Communities, Citizens for Community Improvement, and the North Avenue Task Force, West North Avenue Development Authority, and Northwest Community Action Organization. We had this originally scheduled for last meeting, but it wasn't posted, so the council member requested postponement. It was correctly posted this time, and so we're recommending that you adopt those findings and approve.
So suffice it to say that the planning department believes that based on the finding of facts as enumerated in your staff memo, that you believe that there was both a change in the character of the neighborhood since several of the structures were torn down after the last comprehensive rezoning and today, and several of the other structures have become vacant between the last comprehensive planning and today.
Yes.
And there might also have been a mistake in the original comprehensive rezoning in the fact that these were looked at as residential when they may have been used in part for commercial activities.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Having said that, please recognize that we are for those on the commission and those who are listening in, we are a recommending body on this. We make a recommendation back to City Council. City Council has the ultimate determination on this. And then in order to get out of the Planning Commission and go back to the City Council, we need to have 6 votes the same way, either positively or negatively, in support of or against. So if we split 5-4, it stays here. If we go 6-3, then it can go on its merry way back to the City Council. Now, with that, I open it up for questions for staff, starting with Vice Chair Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do recall this from the agenda last meeting. And Mr. Tiso, you weren't present, so you wouldn't have had the benefit of this conversation. But I thought that we agreed, or at least discussed, that this might make more sense as a comprehensive rezoning as opposed to as opposed to the mistake or change criteria. And I'm just wondering, Mr. Tiso, if you considered that.
Yeah, I was in a panic texting all of my coworkers because I couldn't be here and could not be heard because of the technology. So I stand in solidarity with the citizens online today that could not be heard. But I did get that message. Thank you. I guess as a belt and suspenders and duct tape approach, looking at all of it, it's a higher standard of scrutiny. I think it passes that. So if it can do that, it would absolutely work as a comprehensive rezoning. We didn't do a formal study necessarily, other than just analyze it for our staff report. But yeah, we can look at that for changing things for larger areas of rezoning going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, Vice Chair, I don't think that we have a mechanism currently in place to do a small area kind of comprehensive rezoning right now. I just don't think we have that. So I agree with Mr. Tiso.
My concern is, while I think that this particular case makes a lot of sense, I worry about weakening our mistake criteria to be as trivial as a building being demolished. That's all.
Totally fair statement. And I've been called worse. All right. Is there any other questions from the commission for Mr. Tiso? Hearing none.
Did,
no que-
sorry, did you mention, I'm sorry if I missed it, the urban renewal plan, if that's still in effect? And if that needs to be, because I see there's a zoning plan, I can't see the
I
date.
read it was outside the urban renewal plan.
Yeah, unless I missed something.
It's, code map has it as inside of the Hilton North business area.
The staff report, I'm pretty sure said it was outside.
1801 Bloomingdale. You start.
I'm not-
Stand by one while we look.
I can't think of which one.
It's in the Hilton, according to code map. It's hard to say.
It is in
Well, the code map has it inside the Hilton North business area.
Well, in any case, we're still looking to verify whether it is or isn't, but like many of our urban renewal plans that predate the 2017 comprehensive rezoning, their zoning maps, by and large, have not been updated. I can only think of a couple that have been even approachingly addressed. And so I would think that the comprehensive rezoning, being the more recent, more specific, would be interpreted to control. So if you,
Well, coupled with the fact that in reality,
here,
if it's in an urban renewal plan, the fact that it's now
it is.
C1 would become C1 as opposed to R8 wouldn't affect, it's the use that would happen on the property would be restricted by the urban renewal plan and or, parking requirements for commercial uses versus residential uses and whatnot. Maybe those would be
Okay.
enumerated.
Yep, looks like it is indeed in European. I missed it. Apologies for that.
I agree, and I support this rezoning. I was thinking through the consequences of not updating the urban renewal plan at the same time, if any.
Well, the challenge of doing that, and again, speaking a little bit out of turn, but I've been talking at length with my colleague Chad Hayes, who leads our community planning division. We have a lot of urban renewal plans, and a lot of the land use districts within them are based on the old districts. So to update it would take more than just changing the zoning exhibit. It would functionally actually be a rewriting of the entirety of the URP, and that's a heavy lift. And just because of capacity, they haven't had the ability to do that yet. But ironically, and again, without taking the time to look at the plan, if it was reflecting the zoning and the land use prior to the comprehensive rezoning, it would be showing B22. So we're going back to a commercial use, a little bit lighter than what B22 would have allowed, albeit. But even if it were applicable or relevant in some ways, it coincidentally lines up.
Any further questions for Mr. Tiso? Hearing none, I open it up to the public. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this agenda item? So you're all waiting for the last agenda item. Good to know. All right. Mr. Tiso, would you ask if anybody online would like to speak on this agenda item?
Certainly. So for folks that are online, if you're interested in testifying on this item, if you could raise your hands and then you can be recognized at that point. I'll click to unmute you, then you'll have to unmute from your side. And we'll give it a few more seconds for them to find the raise hand button at the bottom edge of the screen.
27.
And I'm not seeing any hands coming up. And in the background, Marie McSweeney Anderson, our Northern District Community Planner, let me know the URP is only valid for 5 more years anyway.
Right.
So I'm not seeing any hands on this one, Mr. Chair.
Director Breyer just pointed out to us as well.
Well, that's why he's director.
Wow. All right. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Is there any questions, comments, deliberations? Now, do I have a motion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve, adopt the findings and approve the recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Mr. Secretary, will you call roll?
Yes, Robin Allen,
Approve.
Justin Williams. Doug McCoach. Marcia Collins.
Approve.
Talib Horn.
Approve.
Claudia Jolin.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
And Sean Davis.
Approve.
Next item on the agenda is City Council Bill Number 23-0397, a rezoning for the western side of North Lehigh Street, southwest corner of Eager Street, and western side of North Lehigh Street, 52.7 feet south of Eager Street in the 13th Councilmatic District. No, we did number 9. We're on number 10. Number 10.
Yeah, we're on 10.
Okay. We're on the last agenda, minor change, Green Spring Station and Skyview Plan Unit Development, PUD number 74.
Must be. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
I know why,
That's-
I know why. That was a draft agenda that had names on it.
Yeah,
Numbers moved.
I'm not
Sorry
looking
about
on the
that.
Wix. I'm sorry.
No, so agenda item number 10, our final agenda item.
Item number 10, not 11,
Okay.
is
The show you've all been waiting for.
City Council.
Thank you for your patience.
Wait a minute, let me introduce the bill. 23-0397. No, sorry, minor change for Green Spring Station and Skyview Planned Unit Development, number 74 in the 14th Councilmatic District. Eric Tisa will present.
All righty. So this is a minor change for the PUD. And for those that may not be familiar with this, per our zoning code, there are major changes that are specifically enumerated in the zoning code, which is, larger things like moving a boundary, increasing residential density by more than 25% or reducing it by 10%, things of that list. It's a discrete list. If it's not one of those things, then it can be approved by way of a minor change. There's also an engineering correction, which means if you're in the field and you realize that there's something that can't be done and you need to move something a foot or two, something trivial, that can be accomplished. So this is a minor change to change a restriction that is on the development plan for the Skyview portion of this PUD. Go ahead. So this is the entirety of the PUD number 74, which includes the shopping center, and then it's really the northern portion of it that we're looking at, which was the Skyview neighborhood. Go ahead. All right, so that's zooming in on here. That's the residential neighborhood that we're looking at today. And of specific concern is where West 42nd Street comes in from the east and kind of dead ends and then turns a little bit on an alley and then links up with the hammerhead end of Skyview. That's where the pedestrian gate is that we're talking about today. All right, going to some overheads. This is the view. And the next one will zoom in just a little bit more. So it's again in this view towards the southeastern corner. Yep, right there where that road meets the alley. And looking at it from the opposite end, this would be in the upper left portion of that phase, right in there. Yep. So this is the gate as it stands today. The swing gate in the middle, it can be moved for emergency vehicles if ever they needed to do that. And somewhere 4 or 5 years ago, a pedestrian gate was added to the left, in this case, as you're standing on the Skyview side, looking towards the rest of the Hovis Heights neighborhood and the alley beyond. So there's the PED gate. All right, so this goes back to 2006. I was not involved directly in the PUD management at the time. I only did site plan review for the later phases when it came in, but there was a concern for access from the street to the alley at the time, and in 2006, this requirement for the installation of a removable or retractable bollard was included on the development plans. In 2011, The development plan was refined some more. It shifted some of the home parcels that were proposed at that time. And because the development plan was replaced, that restriction was changed, and it reads, hinged gate with fire department lock for emergency ambulance access only, no other vehicular access or pedestrian access allowed. And it's my understanding that this was a negotiated agreement between the developer at the time, who's no longer involved, and the surrounding community, brokered by the council member, Mary Pat Clark, at the time. So the proposal in this case is to simply strike the words "or pedestrian access" from that restriction. If that were done, then the gate gets to stay as it is for today. And if it's disapproved, which we are recommending today to honor the original agreement, then that gate would need to be either sealed or removed. There are no particular legal requirements on this. This is just directly a policy and design decision that's entirely within your hands. You have seen a large number of letters that are uploaded to Wix as of 11-ish this morning. I believe I have captured just about everything that was sent to me on both sides of that. Again, I mentioned that the gate has been there for 4 to 5 years. Of course, that starts to get into COVID time period, and then an enforcement action was started. I know I was reached out to by our colleagues in Department of Housing and Community Development, inquiring, hey, what would the changes required need to be in order to accommodate this gate, because they look to see if there's any other options before going to formal enforcement. And I hadn't heard from anybody in a while. I did get a contact from the neighborhood at that time from a prior HOA president, gave them the instructions on here's what you need to do to apply, fairly simple process. And then it was quiet for some time. And I strongly recommended if there's a way to talk with the neighbors, see if there's a way to find some kind of common ground. It's my understanding that they're not able to come to any particular agreement, so it is here for you today for an up or down vote. You have a lot of folks that are here today. Councilmember Ramos is here as well, and that is our recommendation.
Property was properly posted.
It was.
Other questions for Mr. Tisa from the commission? Anyone? Okay.
And you might.
Yes.
I have a couple questions.
Please.
I just want to be very, because I think it's very unclear what we're actually talking about here. So there's an existing pedestrian gate. There's an existing pedestrian gate that functions in one direction. I think that's key to this. That wasn't mentioned.
Yeah.
So the proposal is to seal it so that there's no access?
It's the opposite. The proposal is to remove the restriction, allowing the gate to remain.
Allowing the gate
To remain as is.
And, oh, I'm sorry, and one other important thing to mention. The gate company, or the fence company that installed the gate did not apply for a permit to do the work. Had they done that, it would have been referred to me and I would have put the permit on hold and it would have been installed in the first place.
So is the issue that the existing gate is non-compliant with the language in the PUD?
Yep.
So
Correct.
the language needs to be changed to allow the existing gate?
Right, so the restriction there, as it appears on the screen, and it's in my staff report, if you just strike out the words "or pedestrian access," then it would allow pedestrian access and the gate could remain.
Or
If-
alternatively, we deny this request for minor change and the gate needs to be,
Kept closed.
well, sealed up, right? Or removed and a fence section put back in its place.
Okay, so I look forward to hearing from everyone on this. I'm concerned that neither one of those is the best or most reasonable solution, but I'll wait to hear.
Any other questions for Mr. Tisa from the commission?
Well, can go back to this photo. Does the hinge gate allow, is it a Knox box to allow the emergency access on the right of this?
Keep going to
I
that
bel-
one right there.
Two separate gates.
That doesn't look like it is. It looks literally like there's pegs in the ground.
It said there was a fire department lock.
Is it at the, on there?
Yeah, but look at those pegs in the ground.
It's restricted by the PUD for fire and EMS access. To be honest, again, I was only involved with this at the point of site plan review. I can't foresee fire EMS ever needing access for that gate for practical purposes. But again, that restriction and those words were a direct negotiation between developer and community at the time. So it is what it is.
Yeah, if you see from the plat, it does not line up with a street. It sort of T-bones an alley. It'd be hard for a big vehicle
There
to
you
get
go.
in
There
there.
you go.
Yeah,
It's just south of West 42nd Street.
right.
And it doesn't look like that gate is operable from a knockbox.
It very well could not be. But as a practical matter, I can't imagine fire EMS
Ever using.
ever using it anyway.
Right, okay. Yes,
Clarifying
Commissioner.
question, this gate is access only one way, not both ways for
The
pedestrians?
pedestrian side has a keypad on it. That's my understanding, that the residents have access to that, but not the surrounding neighborhood.
So the residents of Skyview have access to it, but the residents of Ho Heights do not?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for? Yes, please.
Just a really quick question. Is there a community association
Yes.
in that area?
Yes, and I anticipate that they will be here. You have letters in your file from them.
We have several letters. Any other questions for Mr. Tiso? Seeing that I know Councilwoman Ramos has been here for a while, I'd like to give her the opportunity to speak first. Councilwoman? And thank you for your patience.
You need a stool for me next time. Okay, good. I'm going to move right here so you can see me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Odette Ramos. I'm the councilwoman representing both communities. This is, I have to say, a kind of an unfortunate situation. So I will give you a little bit of history. The residents will give you a history. When you got the sort of technical history, but basically the Skyview is the development that's kind of over the 41st Street Giant, if you know what that looks like. You know, both residents of both communities, I think, are wonderful. When that land was purchased and the developer was putting everything together, I think the residents of Hose Heights felt completely mistreated by what was happening here. And when the developer basically said, we're going to have a gated community, and I will advise that they do not have a front gate, they have a back gate, that residents felt like, fine, well then don't come in our community either, right? So they'll clarify if I made any mistakes on both sides. So the residents of Skyview, this is not their fault. They have been, you know, it was advertised to them that they would have a pedestrian gate. So the residents that are going to be testifying today have been able to utilize the gate, but the Hose Heights residents have not been able to use it to access Falls Road. It is one of the, you know, and there's also been complaints from the Hose Heights residents in terms of people utilizing 42nd Street, parking for their guests, and then going into the gate. I have a photo of a motorcycle going into the gate. That definitely is not allowed. I have a few other things. So I will say that I did work to try to get all parties together. At the beginning of my term, we did get folks together, and I believe, and Mr. Boatwright can correct me if I'm wrong, that was one of the first times that they had heard that, you know, the history of what had happened between the developer and Hose Heights. We have not been able to get folks together since then on a variety, there's a variety of reasons as to why. You know, there may be an opportunity to get folks back together to try to work this out. But we do know that Host Heights is very clear that, you know, they don't want the gate just going one way. And so you'll hear that from residents as well. So I'll be here to answer any questions and you know, work through all of this. And I'll just say what's in the room. Hose Heights is a traditionally Black neighborhood, with Skyview not. And so there's obviously the dynamics of the changes that are happening in both of those areas as well. So I just think that again, it's an unfortunate situation. And while I'm advocating for keeping the you know, for you all to approve the staff recommendation, if you do not move in that direction, getting us all to mandate all of us getting together would also be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Are there any questions from the commission for the Councilwoman? Yes, Vice Chair Stevenson.
Hi.
Hi. I'm just curious if there have been any conversations about removing the gate in its entirety as a potential resolution.
Yes, all of the letters that you've received through Wix, I also received. And one of the questions that I had posed is, would you all be opposed to just removal of the gate? There are residents in Hose Heights that will be opposed to that. Most of the residents that I spoke at Skyview are not.
Commissioner Horn?
In your conversation with us, you said that there were multiple reasons of why the two parties haven't been able to kind of get together, and I was wondering if you could be a little bit more specific about that.
Sure. So we first got together when I literally first came on. It must have been like, I was sworn in December, and we got together in like February or March. Since then, there was another controversy in the neighborhood around the Roland Park Water Tower, or the Roland Water Tower. And it's not the same group of folks that are the advocates there, but I know I was distracted on addressing that, and so wasn't able to bring folks together.
Are there any other commissioners who have questions for Councilwoman?
Maybe I missed it. Were you able, or if Mr. Tiso or from you, could you channel what Councilwoman Clark was intending with the brokered deal?
I asked my predecessor. She is retired, and so it's very difficult to get any straight answers from her when she can't remember. She's cognitively all there, but she's just not channeled into what her previous work was. So I did not get a straight answer.
That was great. I hope people refer to me like that when I get. They may refer to me like that now. Yeah, right.
She's literally just not in tune with what's happening, and I don't want to force her to, you know what I mean? So she also did leave me with, she was not an email person, so I have lots of paper. So leafing through many documents, saw a lot of notes, but I didn't get a clear answer.
Are there any other questions for the Councilwoman? Thank you very much. Mr. Tiso, before we open it up to the public, I meant to ask this previously. Is the road that services the Skyview neighborhood public or private?
It's a private street.
It is a private road. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with no further questions, let's open it up for public testimony. If you're interested in coming up and speaking, just please come up to the microphone, provide us your name, and then let us know what you're thinking about. There's,
Mr. Chair, is there a moving party or that they could speak? Well, I guess.
no, there's an applicant.
Well, the moving party, the applicant.
Yeah, I mean, if they would like to go first,
Just
that
to
would be
hear-
great. That
to
would be
hear- to-
fantastic. If-
I did.
Oh,
I literally didn't.
Did you just want to
I literally
introduce
did
your
not know.
former partner?
I literally didn't know.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. It's nice to see some new members of the Planning Commission today. Hello, Commissioners McCoach and Jolyn. Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg, Martin Greenberg, on behalf of the applicant, the Skyview Homeowners Association. To be clear, I don't represent the developer, and I appreciate the councilwoman's comments that the developer was probably the bad actor here. I was not involved in it, and the residents of Skyview, who are my clients, really are like sort of the innocent bystander in this that is getting that are left with the mess that the developer made. And we're trying to resolve it. I want to clarify a couple of things because I think there is a compromise solution here today. There was a comment about I guess maybe starting with the history. The gate was installed in 2019, so it's been now 5 years. At the time the gate was installed, it was installed by the Homeowners Association, not by the developer. The Homeowners Association didn't know there was a PUD there. They hadn't been involved in the original development. They didn't know that they needed Planning Commission approval to do anything there. They wanted to install a gate, and so they hired a fence contractor who installed a gate. He didn't get a permit. He should have gotten a permit, and as Mr. Tiso indicated, if he had gotten a permit, we wouldn't be in this mess because this would have been flagged 5 years ago. But the gate was installed, and the gate's been in use now for 5 years. And so there's a long history now of how it has worked out. A violation wasn't issued until 2021. So there were 2 years where nobody in Skyview really appreciated that this was a problem. Nobody really understood that there was this process and that they needed to apply for a minor amendment. And candidly, I just got into this last week. So, I'm the late one to the party here. And they didn't know how to go about applying. They eventually got in touch with Mr. Tiso. And anyway, that's how this landed in front of everyone. Skyview installed the gate. It has a keypad right now. They would happily give access to the keypad, the key code to everybody in Hose Heights. And just sort of to cut to the chase, and I'll come back to this in a minute, the compromise solution here is to have some kind of controlled access where the residents of both neighborhoods have access. And I have some ideas, different ideas about how we might accomplish that. But to answer another question that someone asked about, how maybe the channeling Councilwoman Clark comment, how did we get in this situation in the first place? I've been involved in a lot of PUDs, and I get it how sometimes at the last minute a developer will agree to some picayune thing that doesn't really belong in a zoning document in order to get something over the line, like to satisfy some voice in the community. And stuff gets put into PUDs all the time that really doesn't belong in zoning documents. I had a client once who had to agree to put 6 trash cans on a particular street because that was what the community wanted, and they did it. But should that be something that's in a PUD? Probably not. So 12 years later, this was in 2011 that it was approved with this fence across the whole backside. I think we can look at this with fresh eyes now and say that that was a bad idea at the time, and that we shouldn't have constructed the Berlin Wall between Hose Heights and the Skyview community. There's nothing about the original approval of the fence that's consistent with good urban planning or equity. You're going to hear from a couple of residents of Skyview today, and I would like to have everybody who's from Skyview here just raise your hand so that the commissioners know who's here. And we will consolidate our testimony. We're only going to have a couple people speak because I know it's late in the afternoon. But what you're going to hear from them is that there really are 3 reasons, but they're all related. 3 primary reasons why there should be pedestrian access in the back. The first is walkability, which the planning department in particular promotes sustainability, walkability, reduction in vehicle traffic. And what you're going to hear from residents of Skyview is that while the front isn't gated, if they want to leave Skyview and walk to the rotunda, they have to walk down to Falls Road and then up the big hill on 40th Street, which has a 9% grade between Falls Road and the rotunda. That's a big hill, and it's that's not terribly walkable. If you want to promote walkability and have people able to walk from the residences in Skyview to the rotunda and Hampden and the other amenities of the neighborhood, it's important that they be able to do that in a way that's practical. It reduces vehicle usage. It promotes local businesses. Once somebody has to get in the car to go somewhere, they're more likely to go, further afield than just down the street to the rotunda. The second reason is for ADA access. You know, there's absolutely no way that someone in a wheelchair can traverse a 9% grade up 40th Street. Whereas the sort of back route through the alley off of, you know, Skyview and 42nd Street is a much flatter route. It's much more accessible for those in Skyview who have mobility issues. And under the ADA, the city is required to make reasonable modifications to its policy to provide free and equal enjoyment to city services and public amenities that, you know, in order to accommodate those who have mobility issues. So, you know, I think, and you know, candidly, I think if this was coming to the Site Plan Review Committee today, I think the Site Plan Review Committee not only would allow the gate, I think they would mandate the gate. I think they would require that there be a pedestrian route that's ADA accessible for people to get out of the neighborhood from the rear side. And thirdly, which is the overarching theme here, it's good public policy to allow a gate between the two neighborhoods. The gate, the fence in its non-gated in its non-gated way, has done nothing but foster division between the two neighborhoods. There's been really terrible communication between the neighborhoods over the last couple of years. As you heard from the councilwoman, there's this sense of otherness of the people who live on the other side of the gate. We shouldn't be having this obstruction between communities. You know, Baltimore's a city of neighborhoods, and we want children to have friends in both neighborhoods and to run back and forth between the gate, you know, between their friends' houses through the gate. We want the neighbors to get to know each other while they're walking their dogs and, you know, run into each other and have those sort of organic relationships develop with people that you otherwise may not get to know, except that you happen to see them every morning when you're walking your dog down the street. You know, there's no place in city policy for values that say we don't want those people in our neighborhood. You know, we want to have open access between the two neighborhoods. So, you know, all that being said, we think that this, you know, the sort of compromise position here is that there should be access between the two neighborhoods. It should absolutely go both ways. And I think that can be accomplished in a couple of different ways. I mean, I think in deference to those who think that it should be gated off, you know, I think limited or controlled access is probably the right answer. Right now, there's a keypad. We could certainly share the code for the keypad with everyone who lives around there. We could install a fob system where people have fobs, you know, folks from Hose Heights and Skyview have fobs to get in and out. We could agree to leave the gate open during daylight hours or between sometime in the morning and sometime in the evening and then lock it at night. You know, I think, you know, maybe you could even just agree to have it unlocked so that there's a, you know, a gate there that folks can go back and forth through. But, you know, I think there's a solution here that's somewhere in the middle of wide open versus the Berlin Wall between the two neighborhoods. So with that, I'd like to turn it over. We have, I think, two speakers from Skyview, John Botwright.
If you can, before you turn it over.
Yes.
You've said that the Skyview community is willing to sit down and speak, that you
Absolutely.
You were just brought on board.
Mm-hmm.
If I can have a representative in opposition come up first, because if there's an opportunity for you all to talk, and, you know, I know you've been waiting for 3 hours or 2.5 hours to be here, and I respect that 100%. If you want to speak, we'll absolutely listen to you. But if there's an opportunity for y'all to talk and reach a compromise here, that would be better. Because at the end of the day, we have before us the opportunity to deny the minor permit and have the gate permanently closed, have the pedestrian gate permanently closed, and have the emergency gate acting only as an emergency gate, which doesn't benefit either Skyview nor Ho Heights, the community. Or we can say, we're gonna approve the minor amendment as it's proposed, and the gate would stay in a locked or semi-locked condition to the detriment of the Ho Heights community. So I think, quite frankly, there's probably, you know, I'm hearing there's a solution, and as opposed to, you know, getting everybody here, and again, if you want to speak, we'll definitely listen to you. But if you can talk with each other, we would be delighted to, you know, postpone this and hear back from you. But I'm going to leave it up to y'all. If you I always feel like the Board of Municipal Zoning Appeals, like, y'all go out in the hallway and figure it out. Isn't that what they do?
10-minute recess, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Can we have a Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, are you suggesting that we try to work it out immediately?
No,
or-
no, no,
okay.
no, no, no.
Because I think
What-
I think all the residents would actually like a voice today.
Yes.
And I think we want to take time so they took their time to be here.
There's no question. I would give
Yeah.
everybody an opportunity to speak.
Right.
Anybody who's in this audience right now, you've
Great,
you've
okay.
spent 2.5 hours waiting. We appreciate and respect that. I would suggest that let's take a 5-minute recess, since we literally have been here for 2.5 hours, 3.5
Right, right,
hours
right.
now.
Okay.
Okay, give you all a chance to chat, but then we'll come back and we'll listen to everybody. Sound good?
Okay, thank you,
All right.
Commissioner. Yep.
Is that good? Please introduce yourself.
Yes. My name is John Botright. I lived in Skyview since October of 2017. I joined the HOA board in 2021 and have served as president since I've joined. Appreciate that.
Sorry.
Yes, I know. Everyone stepped forward, or I'm sorry, stepped back, and I was the only one left there. So I've learned my lesson. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. I want to express the importance through this presentation of the pedestrian access, how we got here, and what lies ahead. Apologies up front. Public speaking is not my forte, so I'll try my best to get through this, so bear with me. Skyview and myself are hoping, I have been hoping and wanting to avoid being here. We wanted to meet and work with Host Heights, find a compromise for some time. HOA board met with Odette Ramos on site in Skyview in May of 2022 to show her the mobility and accessibility issues and express to her the importance of the pedestrian access. During the visit, we discussed wanting to have communication and build a better relationship, or build a relationship with Host Heights. Odette mentioned an idea of hosting a summer gathering picnic so that both neighborhoods could have opportunity to meet each other. Skyview was supportive of that idea, and it was something that we wanted. Also during Odette's Skyview visit, HOA board members expressed wanting to find a compromise, and we're open to all ideas of how to find a way forward. In July of last year, I reached out to Odette and Lydia. I'm looking to schedule a meeting to discuss that summer gathering between the two neighborhoods, and received no response from Lydia. Separately, I've reached out to Odette to help to schedule a meeting between the two parties, Skyview and Host Heights, but Host Heights they won't meet with us. So the pedestrian gate allows for accessibility by walking and biking of all ages and abilities. It's used for safe mobility, visiting friends, family, loved ones, family walks, visiting parks, playgrounds, shopping, exercising, improve mental health, biking, walking to work, and also dog walking. One note around the second bullet, visiting friends, family, and loved ones. We do have a Skyview Host Heights couple. They've been in a 3-year relationship. Fewer car rides, car trips, so less traffic on the road, and use of local parking. We all know parking is an issue, so the more we can move about the city on bikes and walking is helpful. Patronage of local businesses, such as Giant, the Rotunda, the shop and food places along Cold Spring by Miss Shirley's, and then the Hamden area using Roland Avenue. And then connectivity with our neighbors and community around Skyview. A lot of the support letters that were expressed and written noted friendships and friendly interactions between the two sides, Host Heights and Skyview. I know there was some mention of families that have kids together at the local Midfield Elementary, and how they want shared access so that they can have easy access, to get to and play together. Skyview members, Skyview homeowners moved from the suburbs and from other neighborhoods in the city to be part of this local community and experience the great city of Baltimore. One gets that experience in connectivity, not via a car, but by walking, having interactions with those around you. Skyview shares green space and accessibility via a sidewalk and stairs to our neighbors on the west side. There are families with small children and dog owners that use that green space that are from the local apartments and from 43rd Street that use that green space, and we're happy to share it. We want to see that. Baltimore City recognizes Skyview as within Host Heights. We want to build a positive and interactive relationship with Host Heights. Closing off that access puts up a barrier to that goal and allows both sides to avoid having necessary conversations, interaction that will allow us to move forward and find common ground and make connections. So the first homeowners moved into Skyview spring of 2017. The last homes were finished and moved into in the spring of 2018. We were attracted to having accessibility, mobility, and connectivity within a vibrant community. The pedestrian gate was installed in August of 2019, put into an existing gate to have access to a public alley. Skyview's intent was to improve accessibility, mobility, and connectivity. The HOA contracted with the fence company to complete the work. The fence company motto, 30 years of excellence, was a bit of a stretch. So no one in Skyview knew of the PUD or the access restrictions. Skyview homeowners were not involved or had a voice in the PUD. Hopefully today, one outcome from this meeting is a shared dialogue to find a amicable resolution to access. We want shared access. We want the community to have access because it benefits all. Two examples. One, there's that couple within Host Heights and Skyview. The Host Heights resident, Darius, he uses public transportation. He uses the gate to get to the bus stop on Falls Road. Another example I heard was a Host Heights resident is a co-worker of a Skyview resident. He had to get to his babysitter on 43rd Street in short time, so the Skyview person shared a code and allowed the Host Heights resident to get access. Certainly life these days is challenging. Getting it from point A to point B safely and efficiently should not be, should be the goal of policy and the goal today. I know Mr. Tiso showed slides. Picture, there's the gate. I know there's comments about the fire exit. We spoke to the Hamden Fire Department. They knew nothing of this access. It's loosey-goosey. The pegs don't go in the ground. So right now it's chained with a lock. So there's no emergency access accessible there. Just want to call that out. Without the gate, Skyview's accessibility. So the red line is going down 43rd Street. That's a 9% steep 9% grade hill. And then you are along Falls Road. And the blue line is a sidewalk, and then it's a 47-step staircase to Hickory Avenue. And there's a view up Falls Road up to Skyview. And then here's the sidewalk and the staircase, 47-step. Here's the math on the 9% grade. And then on the pedestrian gate side, it's a 0.03% grade. And then just to show the additional mileage trying to get around the local area. So Skyview to Rotunda using gate is a little under 0.4, and then without it, it's a little under 0.7, and then Cold Spring around McShirley's that's a good 0.3, 0.4. I do want to express that the gate installation was not a sign of disrespect or disregard to Host Heights. Each side was sold on a different vision of Skyview. The residents of Skyview and Host Heights have pleasant, friendly interactions. When we walk, through Host Heights, there's a lot of hellos, a lot of waves. It's a foundation to build upon. Neither party is going away. We must find a way to connect and work together. We need to find a way forward. Keeping access allows Skyview and Host Heights to build a future together. Skyview HOA has not received or did not receive complaints last year, but we received some last month of parking, deliveries, and dog poop. Is poop okay too? Okay. I don't want to be disrespectful. I've asked Odette for more information and details around these complaints and hoping to receive them soon. We have not received any complaints from Medfield or the adjacent apartment buildings management. Upon receiving the complaints from Odette a couple weeks ago, reached out to the Skyview residents. With parking, no one is saying that they're parking in Host Heights. We do not want that. We would like to see evidence so we can work with those homeowners to say that's not allowed. That's not the relationship that we want. We have heard of situations with a couple between Host Heights and Skyview, Darius and Carly. Darius will park in Host Heights and then walk over to Skyview. There's also been examples of Darius and friends parking in Host Heights by his place and then walking over. I think there are situations where there are relationships and friendships between the two neighborhoods that I think are mixing and making it look like it's all Skyview residents, Skyview homeowners parking on their side. With the deliveries, food deliveries, the two closest homes to the gate have an issue with food deliveries. It's not Amazon, it's not UPS, it's not FedEx. The delivery GPS apps incorrectly point drivers to that intersection there. The closest house to the gate is owned by a family. Both of the parents are blind. They have 2 teenage kids. They eat a lot of prepared food and get food deliveries. They also have a hard time navigating the drivers away from the gate. So it's just unfortunately easier for them to take the deliveries through the gate. They don't want that. They want the deliveries to their door like we all do. The HOA has attempted to fix the GPS issue, and we haven't had any luck. We're open to how best to solve that. I know we mentioned that to Odette. She gave us name and DOT. What's that? Okay. So I wish Host Heights would share and raise these concerns, the Skyview HOA, more often and have a dialogue. Last week, Lydia did speak to a HOA board member, and in that discussion, Lydia raised an issue of the weeds, the growth in the alleyway along the fence. Past 2 years, we've had that alleyway cleaned up in late summer, but with all the rain, it is a bit unwieldy and overgrown. So past weekend, I did put in a work order to a landscaping to have that cleaned up. As soon as they have availability, it should be the next couple of weeks. That's an example of we can solve problems when there's a dialogue between both sides. If the pedestrian gate was lost, that would mean increased walking and biking along Falls Road, which is heavily trafficked and dangerous, especially risky with a stroller, young child, or dog. Must navigate the steep hill on 43rd Street or a long staircase on Hickory, which is challenging to most, but especially those with mobility issues. There'll be loss of family walks, loss of patronage of local businesses, and connectivity with the neighborhood and community around Skyview. More cars will be on the road, put on the Falls Road, leading to more accidents and traffic. Future, The pain and mistrust caused by the developer's lies and actions have been associated to Skyview homeowners. We're not the developer. We are city residents seeking accessibility, mobility, and connectivity to our local community. The void of direct dialogue between Skyview and Host Heights has been filled with mistrust and misinformation. If we can talk together, I think a lot of this would be solved. We have opportunity today now to find compromise and have a future together. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the speakers from the commission? Please.
Hi, that was helpful presentation. Can you describe the tenor of the relationship before the gate was installed, before 2019?
I don't think there was one. I know, I don't think both sides talked or mixed that I knew of. One part, the question jogged my memory. One item I did offer Lydia access in 2021. She said no, she wants the gate closed. We offered to Odette in 2022. Again, we're open to a compromise. Let us know what we can do to have a compromise. But going back to your question, I don't know for sure how much of a relationship between the two sides were prior to the gate.
Any other questions for the speakers?
I'm sorry, it wasn't clear. There was a fence there the whole time, but the pedestrian gate was the newest change?
Correct.
That was the, okay.
Do we want to make sure that I understand that? When the pedestrian gate. You guys just need to I need to put a bunch of rubber bands around, and when I start speaking, you just start shooting me with rubber bands. It was my understanding, was the gate, pedestrian gate, and the vehicular gate installed at the same time?
No, the emergency gate, the vehicle gate was there. We then, on the left side,
Thought so.
put the pedestrian gate in.
Okay. So the pedestrian gate, and the
It's a-
pedestrian
within a
gate was
gate.
installed when?
August 2019,
And the vehicular gate was installed when?
by the developer,
Okay.
2017, 2016.
So the contractor that you had hired, that the HOA had hired, only installed the pedestrian gate?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of the Skyview community?
Hi, my name's Will Wu. I live at 4204 Skyview. My wife and I are raising 2 young children here. I'd sent an email with my perspective, but I also wanted to just be here and in person and, humanize things. First, I just wanted to clarify that, this gate wasn't installed as some entitled act of defiance. I'm a transportation engineer, so I know folks at DOT. I sat down with DOT right away to verify the plat situation. That he said that there was some history with the development, so he had reached out to planning. The advice I was given was to engage the community and see what the community's thoughts are on it. I had spoken with Lydia and some others at community cleanup and, voiced that we wished to put in a pedestrian gate. She wasn't a big fan of that being a 2-way gate, but did say if it was something that was regulated, that she didn't take exception to that.
All right, let's focus here.
Sorry. There was clearly some trouble with the developer. I think we agreed that we shared similar opinions about that developer. There was maybe some conversation that got taken out of context there, where I said that that this place could really be like fantastically walkable, like Fells Point, and all I meant was from like a walkability standpoint and everything being accessible, not overrun with bars and drunk young people. So anyway, there's a lot of barriers in the city. I think we should be removing barriers, not adding more. If we suppress access, all we're doing is putting more strain on the transportation network and city services. Less access just means more automobile reliance, which leads to more parking concerns, which leads to greater reliance on e-commerce services and delivery over shopping local. Automobile reliance means that our communities are more thoroughfares rather than routes that those are routes traveled throughout the day, and they aren't places where residents use them as a place where we can have nice experiences and happiness and strengthen the community. Those are things that happen on foot, not in cars. And I think it's important to note that there's a historical context here, and I don't think that our intent is to ignore the history here, and that there are clear lines in the city where things were a certain way, and I think that a compromise is something that honors that barrier that used to be, but if it's an open gate, then we perhaps have the opportunity to honor that history while not keeping that barrier there for all of us. Anyway, so I just wanted to note that, you know, these barriers, it's not just something that restricts young people being friends with one another. It also harms our aging population as well. These barriers make it more challenging for residents to age in place, which a lot of people choose to do, and then where they would be around their friends and family, whereas this more so forces them into age-restricted facilities as they age and can't themselves operate vehicles anymore. So anyway, raising a family here, plan to be here for decades to come, and I hope that you allow us to keep the dialogue open. Thanks.
Thank you. What? Don't step away yet. Are there any questions for the speaker from the commission? Okay, now you can step away. Is there anyone else here or is there anyone else from Skyview who would like to speak today? Okay, members of the host site community, I leave it up to, I'm sorry.
I was hoping to speak very briefly.
Okay, please.
My name is Tyler Morrison. I live at 4217 Skyview. I purchased my property very early on in 2017, moved in 2017. I was one of the few people that had small kids during the time when that pedestrian gate did not exist. I can assure you that walk was arduous. The strollers are heavy, the hills are steep, the roads are dangerous. There's basically two different types of roads in Hamden. There's Falls Road and 41st and 40th that are busy, fast, very scary intersections. I've personally walked to the bottom of 43rd. My kids wait for the bus at the bottom of there to go to Medfield Heights. I saw a vehicle overturned, flipped onto the sidewalk, literally a stone's throw down the way. My family likes to avoid that if at all possible. One of the worst examples of cutting off the gate would be there is a public park that's back there, and it's Hose Heights Community Park. My son can see that park. My son and daughter can see it from our back deck. There's a rock climbing wall. He loves the look of it. There's also a community member built a beautiful fruit tree area, garden. There's some natural landscaping back there. We like to walk back. If that is closed, that means that my family, who I could throw a baseball to a public park to enjoy, would have to walk almost 3/4 of a mile to get to that same park. So these are direct effects that we have. I also understand the history of these issues. I think it's unfortunate that the conversation has devolved into one of race and history. I think it makes sense with the Roland Park Water Tower and the unspoken line of you may not cross this area. This is not that. This is an area where we do have an East and West Berlin trying to exclude people based on the way that they look. I took issue with the comment about look at the differences. You might not be able to tell from looking at me, but I come from a mixed race family. We still own property in Carroll County that is named after my family from my great-great-grandfather, who was a former slave, freed, purchased property, trained his kids in blacksmithing, created an enclave community in Carroll County to protect from the literal Ku Klux Klan that lived in Westminster, and it's still to this day called Dorsey Town. So I understand that history. I don't think that that is a fair characterization. I think the direct impact on bringing communities together is far more important in this situation. And we have tried. I was on the original HOA when the community started. There was zero conversation. We were excluded. We never really had the opportunity to walk through because, again, it doesn't make sense to go all the way around almost a mile just to walk through that area. But we have tried, and there's been zero conversation. We've had more conversations now based on this dispute than we ever had in the 5 years leading up to it. So I did send a very lengthy response via email. I broke down some percentages of change of with the gate and without, and the direct impact it would have on my 2 young kids and our dog, who is getting a little bit more elderly, so she has a hard time with that steep hill. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Yeah.
I have one online resident of Skyview, if you'd like that now or later.
I have
Sorry,
one.
there's a question. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Is Dorseytown in Carroll County still a historically black community?
My family still lives there, so I have aunts and uncles that live across the street. My family still lives and owns that property. It has gotten better over the years, but it's never been a historically black, well, at least community in Mount Airy. My dad used to have to go to the back of restaurants to be able to get food. So it's better, but it's still Mount Airy and Carroll County.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the speaker? Hearing none, if you'd be online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to try a little bit of workaround because we realized our PowerPoint machine is logged in as an attendee, so we might
love
be
of
able to get
God.
it from there. All right, Carly, I have clicked unmute. Hopefully you can unmute from your end. All right, are you sound turned up? All right, we are not getting it in the room here, unfortunately, so that's still a technical obstacle. If you could just give us your comments via chat, so sorry about that, and then I can put them up on the screen. We'll give you a bit of time and come back to you. Thanks
Okay.
for indulging, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Point of record for the future, let's not offer hybrid until we get the technology right.
Well, the techs were here yesterday. We
Yeah.
thought it would work, but yeah, I think we're going to skip at least August 10th until we can get this hammered out.
Okay. Members of the Ho Heights community, I welcome you to speak. Toes?
Hose Heights. Good afternoon. My name is Lydia Wilson. I'm the president of the Hose Heights Community Association. As you have heard, Hose Heights is opposed to having the PUD amended for several reasons, and several of the neighbors will talk about that. But I'd like to give a little history of Hose Heights. Hose Heights is a community that has been long disrespected by surrounding communities and even Baltimore City. Since its inception, we have had to fight for everything to preserve our community, to keep it safe and intact. Back when it first was established, we had to fight to obtain basic city services that every other taxpayer got, like streetlights, paved streets, paved alleys. And I feel like till this day in 2023 that we are still fighting to preserve the dignity of our community. My uncle, who was a former president, tells a story that was in the Messenger newspaper. So it tells you how long ago it's been. But he went down to City Hall to fight for different things. And he would have to sit there the entire day because he was told, oh, Mr. So-and-so, he left for the day, or he's at lunch. So he said, I will come back tomorrow. And to a certain degree, this still continues. We asked on Roland Avenue side that connects to Evans Chapel, we had to ask them to cut their overgrowth. Till this day, we still have to ask them to clear the overgrowth that flows onto Evans Chapel, because you can't even walk on the sidewalk on that street. And you don't even know it's a sidewalk there because of the overgrowth. And today I just feel like the installation of this gate was just blatant disrespect for our community. Yeah, bad blood with the developer. Bad blood with the developer, no doubt, for the Skyview residents as well as the Hose Heights residents. But once we did meet with them to talk about the gate. They weren't aware of the PUD, as they have indicated. And we told them, still nothing happened. So for years, they knew about, but they chose not to do anything about it. And we still feel this to this day, that we are disrespected as a community. And the community has changed, but to talk about this race thing that's going on, we have quite a few non-African American residents in Hose Heights. So I don't understand where the race issue comes in. And with that said, I don't know if dispute is the right word, some of the comments that were said. Prior to our meeting with Mr. Boatwright, who's the current HOA president, I spoke to the former president of the HOA, Deborah, I'm sure, Hardbo, or something, whatever her last name, I don't actually recall. But at that time, I told her that she said to me, we asked Manzo, who was the developer, if we should contact Hose Heights about this pedestrian gate, and he told him no. And I told him that was your first mistake, believing him. So they did know about the PUD prior to our 2011 meeting. Mr. Boatwright also talks about contacting me to give us access. He contacted me during the mayor's parade to say if we wanted to come through so we could get to Falls Road, that they would leave the gate open. So when he said to give us access, that was for the parade. I'm having a real issue trying to understand this walkability and the steep hills. When you purchased your home, it was there. The steps, all of that, it was there. So I don't understand why now it's a big issue. It was there, you saw it when you went to look at the home. The fire department saying that they didn't approve the gate based on previous meetings with the city for other plans. The fire department had to approve the gate. It's not something you can arbitrarily do. With the Roland Park water tower issue, we had to get a signed document from the chief to say that if we close the road, that it would give Hose Heights fair access to water, or it wouldn't be a problem. So I don't know if that's true. And then I must say, I have a problem with their resolution to give us access with certain hours or times. What is, in all fairness, why can't it just be open? If you want to give us access, remove the gate and leave it open. To say you'll give us certain hours, what does that mean? What, are we less than you? And there was one incident where one of our neighbors had to go to court with a Skyview resident, where we've been called some really mean and nasty things. So I'm going to give, for the sake of time, I'm going to give the residents time to speak.
Before you leave, just like we did with the Skyview resident, are there any questions or comments from the commission? Yes, Vice Chair Stevenson.
Thank you for being here. Were you around when the original PUD was negotiated, and can you speak to the intent behind the language we're reviewing?
Yes, I was involved. It was a long, drawn-out process. We worked hours with the developer, with Mary Pat Clark, and the city to come up with a solution. He made it perfectly clear that he did not want his development to be part of Hose Heights and/or Medfield or any other surrounding community. So yes, we worked long and hard on that agreement. And then when I'm getting emails and pictures of the gate being installed saying, what is this? We had an agreement. on emergency access only, no pedestrian or vehicular access. And then yesterday, when a neighbor who was on vacation sends me the photo of the guy going through the gate on a motorcycle, I'm like, really? Come on. No vehicular, no pedestrian. So yes, I was involved in the entire process. I've been involved, unfortunately, with this for too long. For too long.
Yes, and so Commissioner Horn was next, and Deputy Mayor Williams.
Just a really quick clarity question. Can you clarify what solution would be amenable to your association?
I can speak for me personally.
Okay.
I would need to go back to the entire community to have it closed. I don't understand how they want to just give us certain hours to use the gate, but they can use it whenever they want. So that doesn't make sense to me.
What happens, I think one of the recommendations from Ms. Hecker, or one of the things she said, I don't know whether or not the community necessarily agrees, but what happens if there's a gate there? There's just no code. So you can go in and out whenever you want, and the Skyview residents can go get in and out whenever they want. But somebody who's not from Hose Heights or Skyview who comes up and looks at it and sees there's a gate there, like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm not supposed to be there. I'm not going to go. But you know it's unlocked. The residents of Skyview know it's unlocked. And you can both use it at any time. Would that be acceptable?
Again, I would have to go back and talk to. I don't make decisions.
No, I mean, I think at the
solely
end of
on
the
it.
day,
Yeah.
I'm hoping I want everybody to have the opportunity to speak. But what I'm hoping to do is postpone this decision to give you all the opportunity to speak. You identified that you wanted to have that in your letter. And your letter was very, very clear, is very well written, and the points that you raised are incredibly important. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Williams.
I think back to Commissioner Stevenson's question about the negotiation with the PUD. It seems like the condition was added because your community did not want the residents going one way. Like, it seemed like your community was the driving factor for that inclusion of the note, or am I misreading it?
No, you're misreading
Okay,
it.
and so then I guess clarify.
He made it perfectly clear that he was putting up the fence and because he didn't want the communities to mingle.
So then, it's hard to channel Councilwoman Clark sometimes, but it would seem like then she would want to keep it open then. So why would you put the note in to block?
I can't, I'm not gonna speak for her. I can't.
So then, to clarify, to your position, that you'd be acceptable with open gate both directions with no restriction on hours?
Me personally?
Right, not the board,
But
not your HOA?
I would, yeah.
Not your community association?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Is there, yes, Commissioner Horn?
I just have one more question. The HOA said that several occasions they tried to reach out and it sort of come to an impasse where there is no communication, and in fact, you might not be willing to sit down. Would you be willing to sit down and have a conversation where compromise possibly could
I
be
would be
made?
willing to sit down, but again, that decision would not just be based on my decision.
But you would be willing to communicate? And
I would share that with the community to see how they feel about it.
okay.
Any other questions for the speaker? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Just tell us your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Harold Millich. My wife and I have been a resident of Hose Heights for 37 years. I was one of the members of Hose Heights who was with Mary Pat Clark when the design was made up for Skyview. My problem is this: Skyview was designed with the intent of being isolated from other neighborhoods. That was the sole purpose of that. Now I'm hearing from the residents of Skyview that all of a sudden they want to be community-oriented. I have no problem with that. That was not the case when they purchased those homes. The reason they purchased that home is that they knew when they bought those homes that they weren't going to be part of Hose Heights and the other communities. That's what they wanted, and that's what they got. Now, when Mary Pat made the the agreement with the owner of the land there, it was clear. Just an emergency gate was supposed to go there. That's it. Skyview took it upon himself to build that gate. I had it installed. And for 5 years, you mean to tell me they didn't bother to investigate whether it was legal for them to do that? I find it hard to believe. Now, as far as the residents there needing an outlet to go visit their friends, I understand that. I do understand that. But again, that is not Holmes Heights' responsibility. You knew that when you bought that property. That's the way it was, and that's the way it was going to be. So I'm not in favor of leaving the gate open. I say go back to where it was originally. And that's where I stand.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, forgive me. Is there any other commission who has any questions for the speaker? So, I do. So there's no compromise, basically install it per the PUD, which basically says emergency gate only, that's it.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Planning Commission, councils, neighbors. My name's Enoch Cook. I'm second generation of Hose Heights, resident at 1007 West 42nd Street and block captain for the 1000 block of West 42nd Street. And I wish to make a couple points clear. Planning Committee is being presented only a positive image perspective, which is not conclusive, which is commendable window dressing for the Skyview community, okay? You're not being presented an accurate, conclusive perspective, just one possibility. Allow me also to say that I was a federal employee as a federal census field op in the community when it was happening in 2020. In the whole community. I did Skyview, Hose Heights, and Medfield, all of them, even in parts of Roland Park. I'm very familiar on both sides of the fence, not exclusively one perspective that you've been hearing today, okay? And I want to bring out several points. There has not been just one isolated incident. There's a volley of incidents that have occurred here. And if it was just one isolated incident, then it would be a different subject matter, okay? You know, it started when both gates had been forced open and snow from Skyview was pushed onto the alleyway, blocking our alleyway. There was a medical incident at the time. EMTs were called, and they got partially stuck. And I was told by a driver, if we get stuck up here, it'll be a frosty day in hell before we have another EMT come up here. It's not gonna happen, because we have to be accessible to the entire community, not hung up with one element in the community. Got it? That's what I was told, all right? And resident 1015 can corroborate that because it happened by her house. The whole alleyway was blocked off. And I did a conference call with that resident at the time, Renee, and Mary Pat Clark's office, informing city councilman of what was involved and what had occurred. We're talking about close to 3.5, 4 foot of snow that was pushed and plowed from their community and house, blocking the alleyway, and they didn't give a care. No consideration at all. And that's not the only. I mean, there are other incidents too, but the ones that stick in my mind that get into a safety hazard, all right, another incident was a construction team from the residents that are closest in proximity with that alleyway and the Skyview Road. They have construction teams block off the alleyway, and transport materials across the fence and around through that gateway. So the gateway is being used inappropriately on various occasions and illegally. One instance was a dumping situation where members from that community came through our that gateway, coming through our community, dumping on property of Green Springs Shopping Center, which is clearly designated for no trespassing or dumping, but they did it anyway. Now that seems to be a resonating point when incidents occur and regulations are known, violations occur, and the individuals are knowing that they're in violation, and they do it anyway. And when I went to law school, my instructor said, that's called negligence. Negligence on its face. So you got incidents after incident and inappropriate impropriety, and as well as illegality with the dumping. All right, and like I said, it's not just limited to one incident. Now, my neighbor at that time in 1015 that resided there, the breaking point for her was when a surveying team came onto her property doing sites without prior commitment or consent. I saw that, I called her on a job, and she was floored. She didn't have a clue what was going on, which can be corroborated by one of the members in our community. So illegally, they came on trespassing on our property with a whole surveying team doing these bench sites without prior consent, and they gained access through the gateway. So the gateway, the pedestrian gate, has been used time and time again for impropriety and illegality. It's not just casually. And there are consequences when it's done like that. Our community picks up the hardship of it when they decide to do whatever they want to do and do it anyway. These are the sort of things that you need to think about. But this hearing was truly noticed. I put up notice about it, but we only got 2 weeks advance notice. We didn't have an additional ample time to prep and prepare adequately any kind of defense, to be honest. So I came up with an idea about putting forth a motion for continuance to the planning committee and council so we could have adequate time to provide an adequate defense. And I prepared a motion for continuance that I'd like to submit to the committee and council. Okay? So people can be on the same page. Okay? Now, I did that on the fly. Sorry, I didn't dot a couple of I's there. But, I mean, you know, I had maybe an hour or two. Okay, I'm sorry. My apologies. All right? In any event, you've got basically what you're looking at. I want to also say, in one instance, there has been a civil suit that was launched by members of Skyview against one of our tenants at 1020 West 42nd Street. And the resident there was approached by Karen Ayers and stated that Karen said that she was shining a light, bright, excessive light in her household. And she was approached by this individual saying, well, we live in a low socioeconomic, high crime rate area, and she paid $400,000 for her house. And if she wanted to shine a bright light, she will do so. And next thing you know, Karen comes to me crying and says she was sued by this individual, and she's thinking about moving. So that's two members in our community, one that did pack up and move, and the other one that felt intimidated about moving. Can you get my drift, counsel?
Sir.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
Okay.
I apologize.
Please do.
Anyway, I'm getting ready to sum up. Okay. In any event, I just wanted to bring to you some instances of, in a light that may not have been clearly presented or presented in such a capacity that may have been overlooked and not accurately presented. This gate, as I recall, went up in October, and it was not ever announced. We never received any announcements publicized that it was going to be installed. And then all of a sudden, one day it was there. I walked up the street and I said, "What's going on?" It was there one day, and the day before it wasn't. That's how it came about. Okay? That's how it is. And I'm sorry, in some respects, it has gotten that way. And when I did census over there, it did not, that code was not presented even to me. And I had to walk around. All right? And I'm seeing, more than a lot of these other individuals that can walk, you know what I mean? But I managed, and they can do the same. They can manage too, and they're, years, decades younger.
Are you open to any compromise with the Skyview community on this?
Preferably, at this time, from what I've seen, the actions that have been, laid down or by that community, I prefer it to be reversed, sealed, and shut down completely. If those individuals were of a different caliber or made efforts in another context, maybe. But that's not the case. That's not the case here at all.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the speaker?
Thank you for your attention and time, cooperation.
Don't leave yet. Or is there any other questions for the speaker? Thank you very much, sir.
Good day.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victoria Lee. I am the homeowner of 1015 West 42nd Street. It's the house that's directly across from the gate. My husband and I purchased this house over 30 years ago when we first got married, and we started our kids in there. Before we purchased the house, we did a search in Baltimore City, and we wanted to find a home that was in a neighborhood with a rich history, but we also wanted it to be quiet because we knew we wanted to have kids. And we found this gem at the end of the dead end of the street of 42nd Street, and the neighborhood was not only quiet, but it was a neighborhood. Like everybody knew everybody would walk in the neighborhood at the end. So we were blessed to be able to get this home. Over the years, we've seen a slight change in the neighborhood. Nonetheless, it didn't diminish the closeness or the quaintness of the neighborhood, so we stayed. Coast Heights is consistently involved, as you can see, of things and they take pride in the community. We have community cleanup. We talk with each other. They know about what your kids are doing, so it's a close-knit neighborhood. We really strive to keep the community clean and quiet, family-oriented, and kind of remain that hidden gem of Baltimore City. There's a couple of them, and we are one of them. I'm proud to say that. We attended numerous community meetings regarding the development of Skyview and the new housing development that was proposed to come in the neighborhood, and I do mean numerous. And we had proposed different ideas of how the community, like it could be one community, but we were told no, it wasn't going to happen. And at the time, my husband, who's now, well, he's deceased now, but he's Baltimore City police lieutenant, will really go to the meetings. And our concern about the gate that was across from our house was a big concern for us. But the developer said, no, it's not going to be used, only for emergency equipment only, or, if people had to go in and out. So we were like, oh, okay, well, that's fine, So my sister is the one who moved into the house when we moved out, and she was telling us how different things was going on in the house, and she had a little child, and she didn't feel safe. The snow removal, they will push the snow through the gate, and when it snows in our community, because the streets are so small, no one comes up to remove the snow. So the community has to get together. Like, we're a community. We get out and we shovel the snow. I remember one time, because my husband was Baltimore City Police, he has to go to work. He don't have a choice. We shoveled the entire street so he could get out to go to work. And we did the back alley. I don't know, Shirley, you remember that? We did the back alley behind our house so we can get out and then other people can get out. Because we had that blizzard that year and no one was coming for us. Like, we were like, are we gonna get out? And at that time I worked in the city and I remember walking home and I was like, I'm never doing that again. So we got out and shoveled the community so we could get out. When my sister was there, she was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I have to get to work, and they've just piled all this snow in the alley after it has already been dug out. I can't dig out anymore. Then one day she said that there's construction going on in Skyview, and they set up in the front yard. I'll have to pull the pictures back up, but our front yard is directly across from the gate that was supposed to be used for emergency only. They set up in the front yard to do whatever construction. She was like, I gotta go. So she moved out. And over the years, the influx of traffic has just gotten really bad. And then I realized that there are deliveries at that gate. And if you notice, the gate is not adjacent to 42nd Street. It's adjacent across from my house. And so when the deliveries come, they'll either put their flashers on and use the code to go into the gate and leave the car there. Well, 2 cars can't go past there. It can if you drive on the part of my lawn because there's no fence there to get around. And then whenever you have traffic come in your neighborhood, you don't know who those people are. And I'm not trying to be judgmental, but you're just bringing traffic into an area that a person may not have known that that area existed until you start bringing traffic. So of course that increases crime. It's not that the deliveries are just at a specific time, it's all day long, and it just brings noise. And then when people come through the gate, it's not, like I said, at 43rd or 42nd Street, it's across the house from me. So if the window's open, you hear the clanging, it's just constant noise all day long. So it wasn't designed for the gate, for a pedestrian gate to be there. If it was designed to connect the communities, I think it would have been designed somewhere along a different place where it wouldn't affect the homes that are in the existing community. So I agree that it should not, where it is now, that gate should not be there. It affects me. It's gonna affect my daughter. We are now renovating. If you can see that the construction stuff that was in the home, I've convinced her, look, it's still a great neighborhood. I really love Baltimore City, and I think you would be safe there. But after I've learned about all of the deliveries and and the parking, we don't have parking. And when you come there late at night and your parking spot is gone and you look at the car and you're like, I don't even know whose car this is, because we know each other. Like, we know whose car it is. And it's like, you don't park in that person's spot even though no one has a signed parking spot. So-and-so lives there and that's their car, right? So you don't park there. But then you're coming like, who is that? You got visitors? Can you tell your visitor to move your car? That's not my visitor. Well, whose car does this belong to? Stuff like that impacts your life. I understand the impact of their life, but that's going to impact our life. What's the benefits for us? I don't see the benefits. And if someone can tell me what the benefits for us, okay, and it's just, I do not want the gate to be open.
Great. Questions for the speaker? Real quickly, do you live in the house now?
No, my daughter will. We're remodeling. If you saw the construction that was out there.
I saw it, but I think at one point you said you moved out and your
my sister moved in, and she was living there for about 12 years.
So,
I lived there first.
Yep.
All right, had kids. When they started running around, I was like, no, this is too small. We moved out. My sister moved in that same year.
When did
and
you
she
move
had
out?
a child. I moved out in 1999.
Okay. So have you lived there since the Skyview has been built?
So I can't say I lived there. That wasn't my residence, but because of my sister, I might as well have been. Because when she had her baby, I was there just as much as she was over at my house. So we
You
owned the
moved-
house.
You moved out in 99.
Yeah.
Your sister lived there for 12 years. That brings us up to 2011.
Yeah.
Skyview wasn't constructed until 2016.
Oh, so maybe no. I'm not saying she moved out in 2000. I don't know when she moved
Okay.
out. The house just recently got vacant. We're remodeling it now. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. Sorry
Great.
about that. Yeah.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the speaker?
Victoria Lee. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker from,
Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Harris. I am a resident of Hose Heights. I actually live on Evans Chapel. I am considered the neighborhood gardener, okay? So I may get a little emotional, okay? I've been through this process with Lilia for many years. I am a green person, okay? So through this process, I'm the person that was fighting for green space, okay? There were things that was told to us that I took in good faith for our community, that I let them down, that I believed that was going to happen, that we were gonna be part of our park that was gonna remain, and it did not remain, okay? So when you say green space, I am a green space person, okay? And during this process, we did negotiate with the gate. We actually did not want that gate at that particular area. We were told that that gate needed to be for emergency access, okay? So, and that's why that gate is moved to the offside instead of directly in 42nd Street, because at one point they wanted it to come directly from 42nd Street. So it was actually offsetted because we felt that that was going to happen in the future, okay? That someone would say, hey, let's give us access directly into that area. But the developer did express to us that it was going to be a private area, okay? And it was going to be private, and they would not be able to come into the Hose Heights community, okay? So during that process, and when the gates went up, and this was, we've been through many years of this, one day we did come home and there was a gate. Before this happened, the Skyview community did come over during one of the cleanups, and the gentleman was informed that that is emergency access only, and there was no pedestrian gate supposed to be or vehicles going through that gate, going through that area. So that information was done in advance, and they were informed, whoever the HOA person was. My biggest concern is that as a community, there was votes to have that gate installed. And once you installed that gate, you said you wanted a code. And that code was one way only. So as us on the Hose Heights side, you're telling everyone to stay out, okay? And that is where that disrespect we feel came in at. Number one, you installed a gate which you knew you should not have been able to install, and then you coded the gate, okay? The other thing is, it's been 5 years. And if you're saying you wanted to be part of a community and you wanted to be open and you wanted everyone to come through and you wanted to walk out, then you remove the gate. It was very simple. You just remove the gate. And then you would say, okay, you know what, we're doing good faith, maybe we did install it wrong, but we removed the gate, but you had 5 years. 5 years of a code. So it is a disrespect to us. And as far as maintenance, I'm sorry. When Skyview was built, that gate the fencing was along the alley. Guess who was the person who did the weeding? Me. Guess who told me to finally stop? My community. We had to approach Skyview to say, you must come over and weed. Now I have pictures now. They can say they came over in the spring. I'm sorry, but I have pictures of currently what it looks like. And I've weeded earlier. It is overgrowth. And if you have maintenance on your side, then if this is part of your property, then you should have maintenance on the other side. And stating that you need that gate to do maintenance, there is landscape service that goes everywhere. You just come up the alley, whack it, and go back, and go on about your business. So that's a big concern. Their property is directly beside an apartment complex. They're fence to fence. And it's Hickory Apartments that backs up to the park. They have no access into Hose Heights. That is on that same exact hill. Coming out of their development, there is an open space area right there. There's walkable areas. To say you must come in through that gate to get to other things, I'm sorry. You know, I am real sorry that you feel that those steps that were designed or that egress was not enough for you, but that's part of it. And so I am not as impacted as the people on 42nd Street, but I am impacted when I have to walk the alleys and see the overgrowth because you're focusing on one thing as a benefit to you, but that was no benefit to take care of your property on the other side for another community. Okay? So that's why I'm saying it's totally false that they would say that. And that hurts me as a person who weeds and try to maintain it. So, and saying you're teaching children that you're locking people out and saying you can't come in, that's also hurting me too, okay? Because I accept everyone. You know, if you want to know who I am, I'm the person, the one on the hedge in the corner. If you walk up Evans Chapel Road, and I'm the lady that's going to wave to you and going to speak to you. So we did try with the developer, and we did inform them when they did come over that it was supposed to be locked. So that's what I have a problem with. My other thing is that if you do grant an opening of the gate, I'm requesting that it will be retroactive from the time it was installed until the approval gate, that gate remain closed during that time frame. That was invasion into the community during those 5 years. So if you're going to grant it, give us 5 years back. And it should be open, and if you decide to open it, then it should be open for everyone. That means no code, no swing both ways. If the Hickory people want to come through your development, if the Fallsworth Court Department want to come and Medfield wants to walk up that hill and go through to get to the water tower, so be it. But understand that once that is done, you're opening it for everything. Now, from the letters that I've seen online, I don't believe that everyone in Skyview wants it open, okay? They say keep the pedestrian gate, but most do not say open. I've only seen 1 or 2 comments apologizing that the PUD, yes, I understand the PUD, but no one else is saying, okay, this was done wrong, okay? So that's what I'm hurt about right there. An honest apology saying I did this wrong and why did you put a code to lock everybody else out? That's my comment.
And are you amenable to talking with the Skyview community?
I'm amenable to talk to anyone,
But
but right at this moment, it was a lockdown. It was a lockdown at this moment. Remove it, close it, shut it back off.
I mean, this is.
I know.
This is horrible.
It is actually very horrible because when you know the facts and you've lived through it, and if, I'm sorry, the developer, because we knew he was a sleazeball. I'm sorry, I have to say it. He was a sleazeball. And
It only took an hour and a half for that to come out.
right. He was and I mean, I've looked him directly in the face, and we had a set of stairs that went into our park, and he promised me face to face to say I would not remove that part of your park. And when I came home that day, tears came down there. So it's before street on our side. You can see their houses from our side, but when you look from the Falls Road side, you come up their place, there is trees. You cannot see into their development. But when you come from the 2nd Street side, you can see everybody's backyard. And those trees were supposed to be there. Yes, there are some trees, but guess what? I'm a gardener, and they don't grow overnight. But somehow he kept most of forestry on the front side for beautification.
And fortunately, we're not dealing with him anymore.
I know.
Okay.
But for Skyview to say that they're coming and maintaining, no.
That's not what I heard. What I heard was he recognized that.
He recognized now.
Yep.
But recognizing now when you're wanting something, that is different.
Totally agree.
Right,
Totally
and
agree.
that's where I'm hurt
Right,
at.
so
Right.
I don't want to interrupt you, but.
Yeah, somewhere.
Ideally, it would be great if we were able to reach a consensus on this. Because, one alternative is we shut down the gate, we make them, fundamentally keep that emergency gate, the emergency vehicular gate locked so that nobody can drive through it. Because if that just remains open, then, people will just walk through it, right? What's the difference between having a pedestrian gate and a vehicular gate if all you gotta do is pick this thing up and walk through it? I think that's just gonna further divide and just keep the division between the two communities the same. And that doesn't make sense to me. So, ideally, I would love to see a resolution of this that both parties can get behind and say, okay, great. Obviously,
And I understand what you're saying. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But that's why I put in the request to say from that installation date until whatever approval date, that it will be locked. And then during that time period, maybe we can get together. Maybe we can build some kind of bond. And maybe we can come back and say, hey, guess what? Maybe we want to go ahead and reduce that time frame. But right now,
and I appreciate that, but let me ask you, if that were you, and that was the solution presented to you, what would you say? I'd say, the hell with it, we'll just remove the gate, the pedestrian gate. Let's just, be done with it. If you're telling me I can't use it for 5 years, then I'd say, forget it. Lock it up, be done.
Okay,
And
then guess what?
That just further, divides people. I don't know. Anyway.
But they were going to be divided anyway until that pedestrian gate got there. We don't have a relationship with anybody in the apartment complex down there. We don't have no relationship there, only through walking through communities, The only reason you have a community, and you usually know who's in your community. Unless you walk someplace else, you can walk down to Falls Road. I walked down to Falls Road. I walked to Roland Avenue. I walked to 41st Street. I walked the Rotunda all the time, okay? So you just have to walk. Right, you just have to walk. Yeah, and it's just, I'm sorry, it is, for the community, I just think it was just poorly executed. Yep. And that's what I want to say. It was poorly executed.
I don't know if there's any question about that. And and I can appreciate the emotion and the feelings that you have for it. They're very clear.
Okay, thank you. Lansing Harris, Harris. If anyone wants to see pictures, I have pictures.
If you'd like to give them to the commission,
Okay.
Commissioner Jolene.
Great.
Mr. Tiso, while she's distributing those, could you remind me or inform me, educate me? Because while this is a complicated conversation, our decision, what's the criteria for approving a minor change?
There is no formal established criteria. It's not like a rezoning or a conditional use where there's required findings and considerations. This was a restriction that was put on the development plan, and it's an up or down policy decision by the commission.
Wow. Something's nagging at my head. Is the immediately adjacent property to Skyview a public road?
The alley is public,
Okay.
and the Skyview Road is private.
Okay, I recognize that. But is the right-of-way for the alley, the public alley, this property line for Skyview, or is there some intervening privately owned property between the Skyview community and the alley right-of-way?
It would be a fraction of inches. You know, the fence should be inboard of the private property line, not in the alley.
The fence, you know,
You should show the code map. There's a forest con easement that's halfway, 2/3 of the property boundary. If you, I don't know if you can show the.
but where the gate is, what I want to know
This
is
speaks to that.
where the gate is.
That helps it.
You clicked off it though.
Okay, but where the gate and road is on the alley. It's, okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's within a foot or so. I mean, you can see the seam of the concrete versus the property boundary. It's just inside the property.
Yeah, I mean, but, okay. Please.
I just, as a, resident, it shouldn't be lost on this commission, that weeding issue. If a city resident, like any other resident, were to call that into 311, they wouldn't just have to wait the 2 months that 311 takes to come. They'd be told that the city's not coming because it's private property. So it goes to the resources that residents of some of our communities feel that they don't have. It's code enforcement that isn't happening, that's leaving these folks, the victim of these challenges and, literally trespasses. This is a written agreement that was violated, and nowhere in this conversation is there any mention of amends. It's simply, well, it maybe was a bad decision back then, and now what's done is done, so everyone is expected to live with it. And regardless of what may have been the best design at the time or even now, I don't think that that's all that this is about.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I want to apologize. I have to go to a hearing.
I know. You have to go to a hearing, Marcia has to go to a hearing.
For the same
Director
hearing.
Ryer had to go to a hearing.
As do I.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
we do have one last person.
Okay, let's do this. Let's get that speaker in, and then I think simply because of this, we're going to continue this, unfortunately, this conversation.
Yeah, no, we will come back another day.
Okay?
Yep.
So, but let's get, if I can, what I'd like to do today is have all the speakers done so that everybody doesn't have to come back. I will leave it open. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Schnell. I'm here on behalf of Dana Moore, the Chief Equity Officer for Baltimore City and the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. This is also the first time this office has ever testified before this commission, which I think speaks to the gravity of this situation. We do not get involved in zoning and planning and things like that. However, after we talked to the Holmes Heights community and I went out and conducted a couple of site visits, realized that we needed to be in this space and we needed to testify before this commission on the significance of this gate and what it means and how it impacts everything that we stand for as a city when we think about equity and when we think about inclusion. And as I sat waiting to speak and listened to some of the whispers behind me, I realized that this is about so much more than a gate. This is about classism. This is about otherness. This is just nasty. And it's unfortunate. It really is. And so I'll start sharing this testimony on behalf of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights and the Chief Equity Officer for Baltimore City, as our mission is centered around promoting fairness, inclusivity, and eliminating inequity and discrimination within Baltimore City. Our office has been asked by the Holmes Heights community to engage on this matter regarding the amendment to the Skyview PUD and its impact on the Holmes Heights community. Recently, I conducted a site visit to gain firsthand knowledge of the situation at hand. I was deeply shocked to witness the stark contrast between the front entrance of the Skyview community and its rear bordering the Holmes Heights community. The front entry gate was wide open. I drove through this community probably 7 times, just trying to wrap my mind around what it is like to walk through the community and walk up to the gate and try to get a sense of the convenience that comes with it. The front entry gate provides unimpeded access, while the back of the development, where it meets the Holmes Heights community, was secured by this gated structure, which is further fortified with a lock and a passcode. This disproportionate bordering creates the unfortunate appearance of a modern-day spite wall, which acts as a physical and symbolic barrier between the historically Black Holmes Heights community and the predominantly white Skyview community. Such a blatant discrepancy in access between the two communities, where the Skyview community enjoys unrestricted access to the Holmes Heights community without reciprocation, is disheartening and unfortunate. Simply, it's just not fair. It goes against the very principles of community, togetherness, and harmony that we should be promoting and embracing. In all my years, I have never encountered a gated community that is only gated on one side, as is the case with the Skyview development, because the front gate is wide open. So I don't understand the need for such security in the rear when you could just walk through the front if you were trying to get in and do something. In closing, the Office of Equity and Civil Rights urges the Planning Commission to recognize the profound impact that this decision will have on both communities involved. Our office firmly believes that all residents of our city, regardless of their race, background, or socioeconomic status, deserve equal access and opportunities. It is essential to dismantle barriers that perpetuate separation, classism, and otherness, and instead work towards building bridges that promote a sense of belonging and togetherness. And I thank you for your attention, and I hope that this body renders a decision that will uphold the values of equity, inclusivity, unity, to serve as a model for future developers and developments across this city, that this is not the way to do business.
I think it's abundantly clear that if this ever happens again, it's a travesty of planning. That this should never have been permitted to happen, and it should never happen again. But before you leave, were you here for the entire testimony?
Unfortunately, I had to step out for a prior engagement with the equity officer, but I was sure to return.
Okay, because what I'm hearing, what I've heard today, and this is the first time that I've met any of you, is that I've got the Skyview community saying, we'd like to talk with the Holmes Heights community, we'll open the gate, we'll negotiate something, and then I hear, some residents from the Holmes Heights community saying, okay, we'd be willing to talk with them, and other residents of the Holmes Heights community saying, shut it down, don't allow any access. So we're in a position right now where, I thought it was gonna be the other way around, quite frankly. Where the the Skyview community is gonna say, no, we wanna keep it locked, and the Host Heights community was gonna say, no, we wanna have full access.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit, I quite frankly don't know what the hell to do,
Yeah.
Host Heights doesn't want to be used as Skyview's back alley.
and I respect that 100%.
But, yeah, well, I guess we're to deliberate, well, I guess.
All right, so let's, any other questions for the speaker? From us, from the commission? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers from the Host Heights community that would like to speak?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I did have the one online thing to read.
okay. Is there anyone else from the Host Heights community who would like to speak? Okay. Would you read the online?
Yep, and then just so you know, this dates back to 4:09 PM, almost an hour ago. So I just want to recognize Carly Cooper's comments. We couldn't hear from her because of technical problems, so I'll read this for you. My name is Carly Cooper from 4203 Skyview, and Darius Biggs is with me from 4311 Dewey Avenue. We're sorry we couldn't be there in person, as we both couldn't get off work in time to go. It may not be worth it, I can tell you all are checked out, but we are the Romeo and Juliet couple divided by a gate. We will just listen here. Thanks for your service, everyone. And I mean no disrespect when I say checked out, it's just a lot. Thank you for your service again. And then Craig Huntley, you have a letter on the file from him. I acknowledge that he was here but had to drop off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more time, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? Then, okay, come on up, let's be done.
I don't need to go up.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, if you're gonna say something, you need to come up and tell us your name. I know. If you, by the way, if you have to leave, if from the
So-
commission standpoint, hold on a second, sir.
Yep.
If you have to leave from the commission standpoint, you have to leave, okay?
I just want to apologize. I do have.
Yeah, there's a city
hearing I
council
have to
hearing that's going
testify
on,
at,
several
so
people have to go to.
Please excuse me.
But your testimony is still being recorded, and so please, tell us your name
So
and,
I'm Robert Lawman. I live in 1039 Skyview. I've been there about 3 years. I'm retired Air Force, getting ready to retire. And I moved into a community that had a gate and more.
speak to us.
Okay. I moved into a community that had a gate and was moving to Baltimore from Southern Maryland and was coming here because I love the energy of the city and I love Baltimore. I've been here now about 4 years total, and 3 in Skyview. On behalf of myself, I apologize for anything that the previous developer or any of that, and I'm sorry that happened. And our communities are changing, and unfortunately, we are part of that change. And I personally would like to see more inclusion, and the gate could be open both ways. It doesn't matter. I think the previous developer, that was his plan to sell by segregating it. I don't know that everybody who lives in Skyview would prefer. I think most of the people in Skyview would prefer to be inclusive. We have even in that little 40 row houses, 40 townhomes, we have a very diverse community within that 40 houses. So again, I'd like to see it open both ways and have more interaction with both communities. Community events, and we've had several cleanups on that back alley. We're not going every week, twice a year, 3 times a year maybe. We get down there and try to clean up the fence line. So anyway, that's all I gotta say.
So let
Thank
me
very
ask you
much.
real quickly,
Yeah.
does your homeowners association have a landscape company that maintains common area within your community?
Yes, they do, and I
Okay.
believe they're
I
working.
think probably the most important thing that you can do in terms of creating trust and bond with your neighbors is to make sure that that landscape company, every time they come and mow the front lawn, they mow that alley.
Yeah.
They clean up that alley.
Yeah.
That's
And I
probably,
think-
that's
I think-
that's a level of trust that I think
Yeah.
would start to say, okay, you know what, maybe some things are changing.
And I think I heard our HOA president saying that they're working to do that.
Okay.
So, all right. It's Lahman, Lahmann, Robert.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good almost evening instead of afternoon. My name is Brenda Patterson, and I live on Evans Chapel Road, down the street from, excuse me. But I saw that great presentation that the gentleman made with the graphics and what have you. And he talked about baby strollers, walking dogs, and all that, and walking on Falls Road would be dangerous. How is walking on Falls Road dangerous? I walk, that's part of my walk. People live on that area of Falls Road and they walk up and down. And my thing is, you knew what you were purchasing. It wasn't a surprise. Personally, when I walked down that way past it, I looked at those steps. I said, excuse my church, why the hell would anybody want to buy a house that high up? I just couldn't, but they bought it. And, and like Sheila said, that gate, sir, was put up to keep us out.
There's no doubt about
It was no other reason.
There's no
It
doubt
was
about
to
that.
keep us out and make it convenient for Skyview. If that thing wasn't there, they would get used to walking up and down those steps. You shouldn't have bought a home there. If you got a dog and,
And but for the
Sheila
fact that
really said it for me, but I just have to go on record to say that that gate served one purpose only, is to keep us out and to let you have the things that would be convenient for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? All right, sir?
Hold on, I didn't leave, I wanted to say before,
Please.
for deliberation purposes too, I'm sorry I didn't leave early, but there are comments from the opponents, Jennifer Jarvis's letter notes that it was a hard-won concession from the community to put this gate provision in. So I think it's not clear, I mean, I think, and it sounds like the genesis of this gate from the beginning was to prevent pass-through traffic and just pedestrian behavior from the community side, host side, not from the Skyview side, or at least it's not crystal clear. There's a letter from Jennifer Jarvis I'm reading right now that has that.
I'll read that.
That's one piece, but I would have, if there were a vote to postpone, I would support that. I think there should be some collaboration here. I think from an urban planning perspective, walkability and allowing free-flowing, walkable infrastructure is important. I think a way to, but alternatively, there's a policy decision made and there was a agreement reached to have that concession in there. I think a way out of this could be some kind of combination of perhaps a Friends of Host Heights Park or some combination of the Skyview community contributing to some more community-focused maintenance, cleanup to show the good faith that you're kind of getting at.
Great. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're dropping like flies here, so please.
I'll be fast. My name is Andrew Schaefer. I'm in 1043 Skyview. When we were discussing putting the gate in the first place, I was totally in favor of open access because I recognize that the convenience is more on our end into Hamden and the Rotunda, and there's a little bit less convenience on their end down to Falls
There's no
Road.
convenience on their end.
No. I'm just a huge fan of walkability, and I hate cars, and
Would you support a completely open gate?
100%,
Okay,
and I did
great.
when we were first doing this. And I hope that we can find some ways, regardless of what happens here, to show that we want to be good neighbors, and that's it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Schaefer, S-C-H-A-F-F-E-R.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, if you're gonna,
Real fast.
okay.
Only just to wrap up and respond to a couple of things that were said in opposition. I think the moral of the story here is that there historically has been really terrible communication between the two communities. And it's really a travesty, and the prior developer was clearly the bad actor here, and we are all suffering the consequences of that on both sides. And I think if we could get together and have a meeting together and talk through some of this stuff, I think that could go a long way. And I was going to ask you, Mr. Chairman, if you could have the planning department's community person for this area perhaps facilitate a meeting between the two community associations sometime in the next couple of weeks before the next planning commission date. We would love to sit down with them and try to see what type of compromise could be palatable to both groups and what we can do to show the Hose Heights Association that there was no disrespect or malice intended when the gate was installed,
Okay.
and that's.
All right. So, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Hearing none, I am going to close the public record, okay? Close the public hearing. So when we come back, which I'm going to recommend is not this, our next hearing, which is August the 10th, but the following meeting, which is August the 31st, because I will not be here on the 10th, and I would really like to participate in this conversation. And I think there's probably going to be, I know that you're two, and there's going to be at least one more, not Commissioner who's not going to be here, that we would come back on the 31st. So it is incumbent, I think, Ms. Hecker, you can reach out to Mr. Tiso and get the planning director, or get the planning staff member who's for this tomorrow, start engaging them, and y'all can chat. If you can't chat, then we're gonna be back here on the 31st, and we're going to deliberate and discuss it amongst ourselves, and we'll come up with a decision that we believe is the best decision based on everything that we've heard. I want to thank you all very, very much for, yes, please.
I just want to say that hopefully the HOA is listening to the residents. And a theme that I'm hearing is righting wrongs and demonstrating respect. So minimally, hopefully, if you are going to have some type of communication, come to the table with an apology or at least acknowledging what those actions represented to them. And what I'm hearing is there has been no acknowledgement. And it's hard to come to the table if you can't even demonstrate respect. And I think that might build trust. So that was just coming from my heart on that one.
And I'm going to add to that real quickly. I want the homeowners association, the Skyview Homeowners Association and residents to think about what you would feel like if you were on the other side of the fence trying to come in. Because there is no way that anybody can look at that and say anything other than you're not wanted in here. Okay? And so if everybody can, I agree with Commissioner Horn, if everybody can come to the realization and view things the way your neighbor does and put yourself in their shoes, hopefully you all will be able to talk and reach resolution about this. I offer that any other commission member to have a closing statement, if you will.
Thank you, because I've been burning up. And I apologize, too. I did have to step out. I had an emergency situation that required my attention for much longer than I would have liked. But in the recording room there, I could hear some of what was going on, and I will be listening to the recording that results from this before we meet again, because I wanted to follow everything. I'm very aware of the history of Hose Heights. I was following and still am, the goings-on with the water tower. I live in the vicinity. But beyond that, I find this very offensive personally. Not speaking for the commission, but speaking for myself. And for everybody that says this was not intended disrespectfully, I'm 64 years old. I've heard that so many times throughout my life. It doesn't matter whether it was intended. If the result is that people feel disrespected, that's what's important. And if you don't see that, that's okay. But listen to the people that are expressing that they do feel that. And as the chairman said, try to put yourself in their shoes. And if you have difficulty with that because they look different from you, they're a different religion, they're a different gender, whatever, do your best to try to put yourself in their shoes. Because the fact that you don't feel disrespected doesn't mean that it isn't disrespectful. I mean, the fact that there's a gate that operates one way is just highly disrespectful. It's highly offensive. I don't know how else it could be viewed, but I'm trying to look at it from the other way. I guess you all that bought into Skyview spent a lot of money, and I don't know, people are attracted to gated communities. I'm not quite sure, in my view, how that fits in with, especially the Hamden community and that vicinity, and you coming into the city. That does not fit well, in my view, of Baltimore City. I'm a near lifelong resident, but, you know, to each his own. The gentleman from the law department, I think expressed it better than I could, but I took so many notes, I definitely don't need to go through them, but maybe read up on the history of Holmes Heights. You might better understand why someone else much earlier expressed how this is kind of stacked on top of the things that have been happening in the community from day one. Even the very reason why the community was established and how it was established. This just feeds into that. So maybe if you know that, it might help you better understand how and why this is offensive. And being invited to come to social gatherings and all that, that's a nice offering, but when there's not understanding or when it's not coming from a place of, I don't know, I don't want to say not genuine because I can't say it wasn't genuine, but lack of understanding at the root of it. No, people don't want to socialize. They don't. And you might find that offensive. I understand that too, but try to understand where that's coming from. Thank you.
Any other commissioners want to say? All right, with that, we will close our hearing for today. Look forward to seeing you back here. Or if you don't want to travel down here, you can listen online. Yeah, but unfortunately, we'll see how that goes on August 31st. Thank you all very much.